Welcome back to KTRW,
where we have all the music that you don't listen to anymore.
You are listening to your grandfather's favorite sleep playlist.
Yeah, this is a song he had to enjoy while he was at work, unfortunately.
The smooth sounds of jazz to make you forget about the fact that women can't vote yet.
Yeah. 2 water fountains, no one cares. What's up, Zach?
What's up, buddy?
Welcome back to the show.
Hey, we back.
MuseMeTV, everybody. You guys are awesome. Beep, 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 beep.
Should I move? Where's the...
So
That's fine.
I've updated the studio a little bit, so now we have a main camera, and also we have multicams.
Oh yeah,
that are not working right now, unfortunately. Son of a bitch! Jesus Christ!
Is the feed black?
Yeah,
that's good. There we go. That's the way we like it. Don't look at me.
It's not gonna work.
Are you still doing live on YouTube, or are you just putting out later, or what do you?
No,
do?
that's all live still.
Yeah,
I'm still doing live stuff.
I'll try to reel in the cursing. Are you monetized?
Thank you, Blue Suit Guy. No, I'm not monetized yet.
Oh, okay. So I can just let it rip then, huh?
Yeah, you can just talk all the shit that you need to talk on MuseMeTV.
I was doing a sound check one time, and I didn't know there was people in the place. And I just went up to the mic, and I was like, I used to do this sound check. I don't know if you remember I used to do this, but I used to do a sound check where I would go, the pussy popping pickle peppers. And the guy was like, what are you doing? Because there was already people walking in.
I'm trying to count all my P's.
Just trying to work out the pops on the mic. Sound check. But now with the screen check.
No, yeah. This whole stuff that should have been taken care of sooner.
Excuse me.
Anyways, how are you doing today, Zach?
I'm good, man.
St. Patrick's Day, yeah?
Yep, it is.
Horrible.
I think I'm some percentage Irish, according to some genealogy thing, but I don't
23andMe.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Though, it's like it's that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have
you don't have to look at it though. It makes it even more awkward.
Yeah, I don't really have any. I don't care that it's like, who gives? There's stuff about the Irish people that I think is cool, but I feel no deep connection to that.
Interesting. Do you happen to know any history of St. Patrick's Day?
I was supposed to make. I do like the history of stuff, and I got so caught up in like planning tour schedule stuff, and then I flew out here, and then I was just like doing the shows, and shout out Dry Heat, and
whoop, whoop.
I completely forgot until I woke up this morning.
You're like, well, guess I'm doing Easter. Guess I'm going to Easter Sunday.
It was like either try and rush a video that you put out way too late today, or just skip it. And no, it doesn't have a big enough following right now. Like, I have people that really like when I do that stuff, but they're not like, where's our St. Patty's Day video? You know what I mean? So
it's about consistency though, right? Like, the more you do it, the more you get.
I wrote myself a schedule. I was like, this is all we got to do. Do this on this time. And I have a problem where I really like planning stuff
and not following through.
But the execution, it makes me feel good to
see it out.
It mentally makes me feel very calm to if I'm ever stressed out, just mapping out anything about my life makes me go, okay, good. Things are in order. It helps with anxiety for me. But the only problem is sometimes I'll forget that I did that. And then today I was like, oh yeah, I had to shoot this on this date and everything, and just
that didn't work out.
Yeah,
that happens a lot too. I've been getting back on the kick of trying to do 3 guitar videos a day with just different shreds or riff or whatever.
Recording 3 a day.
Yeah, 3 a day, and then trying to post them. Which it's been helping the YouTube channel because apparently people really love shorts. So I post a short and I get 3 or 4 subscribers, and then I do a 5-hour podcast, and it's you just lost 2 of them for that. So I was like, Jesus Christ. And then I don't really have a theme for what the podcast really is. So I'm posting a bunch of shorts of my guitar music, and then the long form videos or the podcast. So, but I mean, I don't really care. I'm just trying to put out any kind of content that I feel is enjoyable to me. Mm-hmm. And then maybe there will be that weirdo who's like, oh, hey, he does a talk show and he plays guitar. Yeah. Who would have thought? Who does that? And then I go through everyone else's channel and I'm just like, everybody fucking does it.
Yeah, but I mean, it really, like, as long as you're fine with, like, what you're doing for yourself, it's like, if it's enjoyable to you, who cares if they,
That's true.
Like, somebody asked me today, we were doing that Q&A down at the writers meeting thing.
1:00.
Yep.
Every Sunday.
If you're interested.
Yeah.
Excuse me. If you're interested in doing stand-up comedy, or you currently do stand-up comedy in Albuquerque, New Mexico, there is a wonderful comedy club called Dry Heat Comedy Club, and they do a writers meeting on Sundays at 1:00. And I came through and headlined, and whenever they have someone come through from out of town, they'll do like a Q&A session where beginners and anybody can do questions, but then you also just kind of like share your
thoughts and ideas.
Yeah. So it
therapy, cool. Kind of, yeah.
It's therapeutic, but not therapy. Therapy's therapy. You should go.
Don't do BetterHelp though.
But not,
because I just feel like I'm talking to an AI robot the whole time, just like, I'm having troubles with relationships, and they're like, maybe you should be looking at yourself first. And I'm just like, I hate you. I wanted a better answer.
I mean, it's the correct answer, but.
I know, right? AI knows all the correct answers, but you're like, it's a fucking robot. This guy can't tell me what the fuck to do. You're a robot.
Yeah, therapy with something isn't probably legit when they're like, you can text it. And you're like, well, that's not therapy.
What's the QR code I can get there?
But anyway, we were doing the session, the Q&A and everything, and somebody asked about clips, and they're like, when do you put out clips? And I was like, well, when it comes to stand up, like, the only reason to put out a stand-up clip is to have like a portfolio of what you do, so that if somebody wants to book you, they can look and see that you're capable.
Okay.
That's the basic level. And then once you're at the point where you're like featuring and, maybe like low-level headlining or whatever, then, you're like, oh, these jokes are pretty good, and, maybe something will go viral. Like, I've had a couple go viral. And you're like, well, if it goes viral, and then I can pick up people that might want to see me in whatever city,
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say the majority. There's a few exceptions, but the majority of people do not get good at stand-up comedy for years. So unless you are being asked to headline or feature, for someone, it's probably not going to happen that your stand-up comedy shorts, clips, or whatever are going to suddenly elevate you to some level of success that you're not having in your own scene.
Okay. And it kind of is like, that's what I kind of found out about comedy too. It's like mingling and finding people that like, I was very fortunate to be able to open up for Paul Rodriguez, but it was just because I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And the opener sucked. So that's the only reason I got so lucky with that. And I was just like, well, this guy, he knows me from comedy, the promoter.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, Anno, I'm glad you came to the show to watch it. And I'm just like, yeah, I just came to watch it. And they're like, well, the opener sucks. And, I mean, we can use somebody else. And I was fortunate to do that. But it was who I knew.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing, and this doesn't get talked about as much. Everybody always says, oh, right place, right time. But part of the reason why right place, right time does happen is because putting in the work of showing up and the work of the stand-up, right? So, like, it's not just who you know. You got to be able to back it up, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But also, it's like we were talking to some of the newer comics today about, like, if you're not getting booked on something yet, like, it's probably a skill level thing, and you're, like, working your way up, and that's okay. It's okay to not be great. If you were great, that'd be weird. Very few people are just all of a sudden good at stand-up comedy. It's not how it works. Well, or most things, things, there's like guitar virtuosos and stuff, and they're like, what, one in a million that you're like immediately good at music.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not the norm.
Even then, it's just like, it still takes time. Like,
exactly.
It still takes time.
Yeah. You may have an inclination towards something, but it doesn't mean that. So anyways, we were talking about that, but we were also talking about, the other thing is, if you're not around, people don't think about you.
Yeah.
So it was right place, right time for you, but also you were around.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to be at the right place at the right time if you're out at the places.
That's true. And that's what I've kind of learned more over comedy too, is like, I can't get upset if I'm not getting booked is because I'm not going to any of the open mics. I'm not going to go support other comics at their shows because they're like, hey, he's at the show. I saw him do good a couple weeks ago. Maybe I should get him on one of my future shows coming up. And that kind of leads into a snowball effect where you start, oh, well, you got to do, one of the dry heat shows. You got to open up. That's cool. Maybe you'll get to open up at another location, or somebody else is throwing a show somewhere else. Yeah. And that helps a lot too. Dude,
that's 100%. Like right now, I get to do a lot of cool stuff just because I did some other thing that I didn't want to do, You go do a mic that you didn't want to do, and next thing you know, you meet somebody cool, and then they put you on a show, and it's it's just the way it works.
Yeah. It's pretty fun. I'm pretty excited that you do comedy now in Los Angeles, which is pretty sick.
Yeah, it's cool. It's humbling. Yeah, but it's cool.
Is it like, how did you end up getting on or doing the Riff Raff show? Like, how did that work out?
So there is a thing of like, when you get to a bigger city, there's so many comedians down there's so many people like kind of trying to make their way through comedy that like any big city, people move from other places, and you get a lot of transplants and stuff. And Los Angeles Los Angeles and New York are, of course, the two biggest places for that. And in both cities I've lived in, in both of them, you just find the Florida people, and the ones who have been there the longest. There's a guy named Ryan O'Toole who runs a great show out there called Group Shower. It's a lot of fun, and they also have a mic that they sponsor to like, give people mic time, but they book a showcase out of it.
Okay.
But like a lot of the Florida people, will go there because that guy started that, and you just kind of like meet those people. But then eventually, you just become an LA comic who's from Florida, and it becomes more of a like, hey, we both have that thing,
Okay.
But so a buddy of mine named Billy Myers, he went out there. He was out there a couple years now. I think maybe 3 years or something now. But but he'd been out there for a minute, and he'd been doing the mics and getting to know people, doing shows, and he took over this show called the Riff Raff. That was the original name, and it was
an established show already.
Yeah, but the way it was then was there was a riff bucket and a raff bucket, or it might have all been in the same one back then. I forget. I think there might have only been one bucket, and it was all just mixed in. Maybe. Okay. Because back then it was much less. The stakes were lower, so it would be something like it would be something silly like sing your next joke or something, or like sing a riff, right? So you'd pull that, and then you'd pull a riff, and then you'd have to like sing whatever the riff of the topic would be, right?
Okay.
So like it started off fairly chill with just like silly stuff to kind of get you out of your head, because there's a lot of these like theme shows and mics and stuff in LA that kind of help you explore these other parts of your comedy so that you're a little more loose on stage, and it also helps with the mic scene to just not be doing 3 minutes over and over and over. You know what I mean? Like everybody kind of gets tired of that after a while, especially after like years of being out there. You're working on 3 minutes at a time. So,
okay.
I mean, not all places, after a while you're like doing showcases and stuff. But anyway, so when he took it over, it was a mic. So people would just come and sign up. And then slowly he started to introduce new elements of the raft bucket. And then he started writing riffs that were like, instead of just like topics to riff on, he started making them like stoner questions from the internet type stuff,
Okay, yeah.
And then to the point where it became like a core group who was like, oh, this show is cool, we like it. And then the same group kept showing up. We call it the Won't Sue crew.
The Won't Sue crew.
Yeah, because it's the people who were just like down to do whatever. And so he developed it into more of like an actual show. And then he changed it. So he changed it from a mic to an actual show. And we did that at Third Wheel Studios, or Third Wheel Comedy for a long time, which is a great venue out in LA.
Okay.
Great performance space. They have like 3 or 4 mics every night, and they do produce shows. They got cameras set up in there and like good sound. So, and good folks that care about comedy and comedians. So it's really cool.
Okay.
It's not just like a bar show, which I mean, there's a lot of great bar shows, but it's cool to have a space that is dedicated to comedy, you know. And so developed the show there, and to the point now to where, you know, the craziest thing was like the nuke in the bucket, which is like we get a riff bucket and a raft bucket, and the raft bucket has a dick punch pool in it. So you could potentially, and you can say no to anything in any of the buckets. You can say no, but your set's over. So,
oh really?
So there is a pressure to go like, okay, well, you know,
I gotta push it. Yeah.
Now that is not maybe the norm. You know, it is like there's one in there, and it's, you know, and it keeps everybody on their toes. You know,
just
like,
in case. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a lot of fun, and regardless of how that goes, you know what I mean, like everybody has a good time, and it's like silly stuff like, you know, give somebody a piggyback ride, or someone gives you a piggyback ride like while you do a riff.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like and we've had pretty big people like Eddie Pepitone and Jason Ellis arm wrestled shirtless in the Comedy Store. Like
that's pretty sick.
We have a pro skateboarder, and you know, this icon of comedy shirtless arm wrestling. Look, it's and then in between, you know, professional comedians just riffing and like crushing it, and it's so much fun, and it's cool. And the Comedy Store has been real gracious to us to give us every third Wednesday at the Comedy Store we do it.
Okay.
It's pretty cheap. It's $10, which is
to go see the show. Yeah,
which is pretty cheap for the Comedy Store. I mean, that's one of the cheapest shows you can see there. But it's also like a lot of fun. So it's not that kind of vibe of like sitting through, not that, I mean, obviously you want to go see like all these big headliners that come through there, but especially for the people like looking for something different and fun, you can still see bigger comics and then some newer comics you might not know. And then just people like having a good time. Like that's the really big thing is like, it's just a lot of fun. And it involves the audience with like suggestions, and like sometimes they come up on stage and like, but it's never like mean spirited or anything. Everybody's got like a good vibe.
Okay. And that's the beauty of like the comedy fans, right? Like, you know, you can go to all the shows there, and that's one of the shows that's included that you would like to go see.
Yeah. So you can, I mean, and that's the great thing about the Comedy Store with the 3 rooms, you know, you can, you know, if you're on vacation there, you can go see the Riff Raff, and then the same night, the Riff Raff's on at 10:30, you can go to the early show and then go right over to the Riff Raff. You know?
Oh, nice.
So you can have that kind of sit and just watch traditional stand-up and watch these big stars that you love, and then you can go see like kind of a wild thing, and like so it's cool, man. It's a lot of fun, and we're got a pretty good, you know, social media thing going. You know, just trying to grow that a little bit, and working on some other big stuff. I don't know if I can go into it right now.
It's okay.
But good stuff. We're developing.
I'll save that for the Patreon.
Yeah, we're developing some more cool stuff for the fans of that show and for the future of it. So it's really cool.
If you guys have noticed, he's crossed his legs 3 times already.
Twice. That leg started to fall asleep.
So that's cool. The cool thing that I see that happens in like the LA scene, and like I don't really know too much of the New York scene, but it's just the openness to go out there and just try your comedy in front of more people, because you get more of a, I guess you could say, like visiting audiences, right? People that just come from a vacation, or people that are there because they're trying to like, oh, LA, the place of dreams, and then you're just like, hey, there's some cool things going on here. Let's go check out some of the Comedy Store stuff. Or I mean, there's other mics that go on there too, right? That are pretty well known. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's like 200 mics, and
that's horrible.
Yeah,
never mind.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like every comedy scene has pay mics, and you know, somewhere like the Store where they're like, you know, set of the mic on every other Sunday, they do a thing called set of the mic. You do 2 minutes, they pull your name out of a bucket. Maybe you go up, maybe you don't. And the entry is to buy a drink, which is, for a big city,
not bad.
Is pretty standard, honestly, for a club.
Yeah.
And, you know, most of the mics are free. And a lot of the time, this is not across the board, but a lot of the time, if it's an independently run show that has a pay mic, it's probably just someone trying to make money off of comics. Which is part of the deal. You know, that's the thing with comedy. You know, the comedy classes that cost $300 that a club will put on, you know.
Okay.
And, you know, Yeah, real quick, you don't need a comedy class. If you have the money, it's great. It's a great way to, if you have $300 to just blow.
What would you learn from like maybe like stage awareness and like
the biggest thing you get out of it is actually the thing that I don't even think they count as the actual class, which is the writing workshops. You get to sit around with other comics and then kind of like spitball ideas, which again you can do for free.
Okay, that's true.
just hang out, just get
hang
to know
out
some
with
comics.
people, yeah.
But I mean, they literally, dude, it's. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it to some extent, but I mean, you do get the practice of getting up on stage and not having to worry about an audience or whatever and being too harshly judged, maybe.
Okay.
But I mean, essentially, it's like, hey, hold the mic at the base and keep it close to your face.
Yeah, make eye contact with a few people.
Try to have some stage presence and move the mic stand.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. That's crazy that nobody really gets that.
But they have to justify your $300, so they can't just do one class where they give you the basics and then go, we're going to do a bunch of writing workshops. So instead, they pretend like there's 6 weeks of, like a 6-week intensive on how to do
class course.
And you can't teach anybody to be funny. Like, there's a lot of people in comedy that can't even do that. Like,
that's the weirdest part about it too. Is like, I think you just have to find the funny in yourself after a really long time, right? Like, you just some people are naturally funny. Some people can pull it off or whatever. But when it comes like, I see it at like work all the time. Like, I kill all the time at work. Like, but these people know me. They understand what I'm trying to say and stuff like that. But when it's in front of an audience and stuff, and you're just like, what's the deal with airline food? It's just not as effective as it would be. I don't know. It's
or in your case, it would be, what's the deal with my food?
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't know your reference.
Yeah. What's the deal with the old people not liking my food?
Yeah.
It's all baby food anyways.
Wait, is that in your act?
No.
There you go.
Yeah.
New bit. Write it down.
I don't work in the kitchen no more, though.
Oh, okay.
I work in the activities department.
Oh.
So I got to play bingo with them. I literally hear all their problems about all the other CNAs that are mean to them. I'm just like, oh, man, well, don't worry about it too much. At least you get to see me. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And then that kind of helps a little bit, but it's still...
Don't worry about your problems. I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, it's fun. I've enjoyed working in the activities department more than I work in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But the best part about working in the kitchen is that, like, you can literally make anything you want when you want, and you're just like, I'm fed. Like, I don't have to worry about food when I go home because I ate at my facility, compared to, like, at the activities department. I'm just like, damn, there's only a bag of chips here. What am I supposed to do? But that's been a fun transition, too.
Yeah.
But I need to do more stand-up because stand-up is actually really fun. I mean, I watch it all the time. I'm really indulged in it. I'm going to go see Mark Norman here on Saturday. He's coming to the Kiva Auditorium, so that's cool.
That's very cool, yeah.
I sent him a message on Instagram one time where I was like, hey, buddy, you should come to my podcast. But I didn't know how to, like, word it.
Yeah.
So I just had ChatGPT write it for me. And now that's even weirder because it was like a 4-paragraph message, and he's probably looking at it and he's just like, oh my God, this is weird. I'm not ever going to talk to this kid.
How did it come out?
It's actually very professional.
Okay. He probably didn't look at it.
Yeah. Well, he's looked at all my other ones and responded to them, but I think that's just like an easy thing, Like, you can be like he...
Wait, when did this happen? Because he's probably got a social media manager now.
Yeah, that's the shitty part about that, too.
Because he blew up during, more, he was always big in the comedy circles, but he blew up more after, the TikTok explosion,
And I kept watching him on... do like other people's podcasts, and he was always about like, I don't mind doing a lower form, not so popular podcast, because it's putting yourself out there and helping out other people and stuff.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. I've met him.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna hopefully meet him on this Saturday. Like, I'll do the whole line thing, and maybe I get to meet him and stuff. But here's the message. All right. Dear Mark Norman, greetings from the world of punchlines and knee slappers.
Did the full name?
Yeah. I hope this letter finds you swimmingly in a pool of laughter, or at least enjoying a hearty chuckle.
Yeah.
My name's Angel Lopez, a stand-up enthusiast, fellow comedian, and a certified member of the Mark Norman fan club. Unofficial, but incredibly passionate. That's first paragraph. Now let me cut to the chase. MuseMeTV is a podcast that's an electric as elastic as a cat on roller skates. Want you to be a star on our upcoming episode in Albuquerque when you come down. Why? Well, besides being a fan of stand-up comedy, we firmly believe that your humor is like a rare unicorn, hard to find, but once discovered, absolutely magical. As someone who has navigated the choppy waters of stand-up for 4 years, I've come to appreciate the art form in its glory. Your comedic prowess is like a beacon of hilarity and a vast sea of jokes, and we want to bask in the glow of your episode on an epic promotion. Like if I'm like 30,000 people watch this and they're gonna go to a show because of it. Now here's the kicker. This is where I probably fucked up. What if, and bear with me, you could grace our podcast, but also let me warm up the crowd for you?
Oh my God.
How many times have you gotten that? Have you ever gotten anything where you're just like, hey, Zach Bennett, I know you're coming to my town. Are you looking for an opener? Have you ever had that come at you?
No, I'm not even close to big enough for that. I've had people that I know, and then people that I barely know, or people that I like through comedy, like then be like, oh, it'd be cool to get a spot, or can I open for you? And I'd be like, I don't really know you, and I know a shitload of people, so it would be kind of weird for me to give you a spot and not a friend.
Because I've always wondered about that when like big names come to our town, and like some of our local comedians got to open up for them. I was like, how did that happen? Like I remember Theo Vaughn came, and AJ Matthews got to open up for him, and I was like, I wonder how that.
Well, so Theo, I actually helped get somebody a gig with him before in Jacksonville. A friend of mine. When I was living in New York, somebody messaged me and they said, hey, Theo's looking for, somebody that could, do a spot on the show. But they want to make sure they're like adequate, and I trust your judgment.
Okay.
And of course immediately I'm like, why am I in New York? I was so sad. I was like, oh man, I wish I could fly back and do it,
Yeah.
But it would have been impractical. I was living in New York. I was broke.
Yeah, there's no way I'm getting back and there at the same time.
Yeah, but it would have been cool. But also, like, the thing you learn about comedy after a while is, like, most of the time, it's cool that you get to do this stuff, but rarely does it ever turn into, like, a bigger thing. It's just one more cool thing you get to have on your resume that builds up. Yeah, it's like that whole showing up thing,
Yeah, because you hear those stories all the time too, where it's just like, hey, I got to open up, and then he liked me so much that he took me on tour with him.
It's incredibly rare. I have a buddy that happened with him and Nick Swartzen. He got to open for him on a regular basis, which is cool.
Yeah,
but it's just not the norm.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
But so yeah, I recommended a friend of mine, and he did great. But like. That was the thing was Theo Vaughn, like, I think because he had come up through so much of stand-up, and he knows how hard it is to climb that ladder. He's like, that crowd's coming for me. Might as well throw somebody a bone, I mean, that's super cool that he's done that. Like,
yeah.
Because there's a lot of comics that, like, they got a lot going on, and I understand why they don't do stuff like that, or they have, like, a certain kind of show, like it's crafted in a way to where they want to keep it tight. I mean, a lot of shows won't even have a host anymore. The guy I open for right now, my buddy Ben, he doesn't have a host or anything. Like I open it. I do 20 minutes. I get the crowd warmed up. I do,
and then you just
and then I bring him up, and then that's the show.
That's it.
So, and then because he's working on his getting his Netflix like thing ready in case that all works out. It's always fingers crossed, but he's working on that, and so he needs the time to be able to do it. But he also needs the crowd ready because it's his crowd. They're there for him, So I'm able to kind of like the people that haven't been to a stand-up show before. I feel like I'm a pretty good
introducing, letting what's going on and
get everybody on board and in the right headspace for.
Come on, you fuckers! Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I'm a good hype man sometimes. But also, just kind of doing some traditional stand up, and then also letting them know that, like, we're here for you guys to see this hour and get it. He's trying to get that to where it's the best it can be, and you're a part of that. And like, so that's an interesting thing about the whole like opener thing, right?
Yeah.
There's different comedians doing different things. So So I mean, there's some comedians that they're working on a lot of stuff all at once. Sometimes they'll come to a city and just have a God mic. Someone's on the God mic and just introduces them, and they'll do an hour and a half, and then it's the show.
Okay.
So it all depends on, what's going on, because now I think we're moving into this era of like comedians getting to have more of like their own artistic direction for their careers now.
Okay.
Like, because back in the day it was like you were trying to get on TV or a movie or something, right? And then you would eventually, parlay that into ticket sales, and like that was the game, And whereas now there's just, there's such
I don't usually clean them, so that's a lot of ears in that mic.
My God, dude, I hate you. No, but now we're at a place where comedians, can really make these decisions for themselves, and there's so many more comics now than there used to be too.
Yeah,
because there's like so many more open mics and so many more, non-traditional ways of like kind of working your way up these ladders. So like, yeah, I think when there is those instances, it's because those headliners made sure that somebody got to do that. Like Jake Otero getting to open for Chris Estrada.
Yeah,
super cool thing, But sometimes they don't use locals. Sometimes unless somebody's already passed through that club and can do other clubs or something.
Okay.
So it's all varied,
And that's what's cool about like now what's happening in our scene is that like when I started, there's no comedy clubs, and now we have 2 pretty big comedy clubs, and people are getting the spots because they've been putting in the work and stuff, and I think that's pretty sick. Like that's pretty badass.
Yeah, man, it's great. I don't think a lot of people can fully appreciate just how cool and how much has changed, and like that's a journey for like a city's comedy scene to go through, like having no club and just trying to utilize every space to like give everybody opportunities, and like how many, how interesting it was, like the dynamic of how that happened, like with two headliners come back from New York, to during the pandemic, and like be with their families, and like try and everybody's trying to navigate how to make it through this difficult time, and then they're like, you know what, like we want to give back to this city we started in, we're going to start this club, and like everybody really like trying to make sure that there's as much good stuff going on, and of course there's the usual like shows that aren't as good, the ones.
Yeah.
But that's in any scene, and it's
who are we talking?
We don't gotta. But like
we name drop on this episode. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but
nobody watching would care, so it doesn't matter anyway. At that point, you're just starting shit for yourself for no reason,
That's what's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but also like the amount of comedy that isn't, the amount of comedy shows that don't get produced well is the majority of them.
Yeah.
Like there's clubs that don't run good shows. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's just comedy can be real hit and miss like that, and then it's up to people that know what they're doing or people that care to really try and make it the best it can be. That's it.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
ChatGPT should not have written my proposal to Mark Norman.
That is
the cringe is cringe
beyond backwards of how you would probably need to reach out to someone like Mark Norman.
That's true too, because like the whole time I was just like, I should have just did 3 sentences where I'm just like, I'm a big fan. Would you like to do my podcast? Mazel tov. That should have been it. Yeah, that should have been it.
He's a comedian's comedian. Like he hangs out with comics after shows. He hangs out with comedians. I got a buddy who opens for him. And he's like, all right, 2 friends that open for him. Yeah. One when he's in certain areas, the other whenever he's in those places, and like, yeah, they're like, yeah, he's cool as hell. Hangs out with everybody after, talks to the comics. Like,
yeah, that's what's so sick.
So like, that is that is very backwards from probably how you would have.
And that's so my fault again too, because I just felt like, oh man, like where's the confidence? You should have had more confidence into doing something like that. And
I felt like it was too confident.
Oh yeah.
It presented as some like corporate speak email that you'd get from like, we really want you to be part of our jewelry sales.
You would be a great representative to help us sell more.
I know those are scam things, I'm assuming, when you get those messages, and they send them to me like
pretty often.
Yeah, and I'm like, you didn't even bother to look at my last video. Like, you've seen my stuff.
Yeah.
You want me to sell your jewelry?
You want me to sell your art?
Yeah, you want me to tag that in my video about
Yeah, I don't think
some weird role play thing or something.
I don't think any of us are gonna make any money off of that.
No company. I mean, I could see the standard podcast ones maybe sponsoring me.
Okay.
Blue Chew.
Yeah. Yeah. BetterHelp.
I'm pretty sex positive.
Get laid.
But dude, some of my merches go to therapy. BetterHelp. Probably go to a real therapist. But I'll take your money.
Might as well. Cheaper version, I guess.
Anyway, so yeah, that's I forgot what we were talking about.
That doesn't matter. That's the best part about this podcast.
Oh yeah. No, we were talking about the shows, but I mean, it can be real hit and miss with shows, but as long as there's people who care, and want to produce something cool and give people opportunities, and there's enough people like that to where that kind of chain of
events.
Yeah, like this weird cyclical way of kind of looking out for each other.
Okay.
So and it all works in tandem. So when somebody at a mic looks out for somebody else and that person does well and they look out for that person, and then that it just goes on and on,
Yeah.
And there is too many comics and whatever, blah, blah, blah.
But that's where the weeding out process happens, right? Yeah.
Exactly. At the end of the day, no matter what, when you're doing well, someone's going to let you know, and they're going to want you on a thing, or people are going to find your stuff and like it, or whatever that is,
Yeah.
So Seth Rogen had a funny thing where he was, or a good thing where he was you definitely won't make it if you don't do the thing, but if you do the thing, you might make it.
You might make it.
And if you don't, it's the same odds as the other thing. So
yeah,
why not?
Yeah,
just try to make it.
You always hear that too. It's like if you're trying to do it, you have a better chance of doing it than not doing it at all.
Because there's zero chance with that.
Yeah. And
also, if you're somebody, I think a lot of comedians especially don't really have another thing that they can see themselves doing. Not that it's not possible to. I've done plenty of jobs. I could go back to that, and I'd be fine.
Okay.
But I know that I'm happier doing this. So as long as I can do it and make money and
live.
Yeah. I mean, I'd go back to working a regular job and just doing this for fun if it all went away tomorrow, and they were just like, all the comedy clubs are gone, there's no money.
Yeah.
I'd still show up to a mic.
We turned communists, so that's what we have to do now is go back to work.
I can see them having communist clubs.
You think that?
Yeah, you just couldn't speak out against the party or whatever.
There you go. You're just and brought to you by.
I guess we'd all have to share the time.
That'd be hilarious. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but that's the one thing I love about the podcast too, is that I just like hanging out with people and just having a conversation and bringing up random stuff and whatever comes to mind. I don't want to have anything scripted. I don't want to just be these are important topics that we have to talk about on this podcast because that's what's happening in the world. And it's just half of the people that listen to certain podcasts don't care.
Yeah. Well, and there's enough of that.
Yeah.
It's like the Instagram algorithm, You're like, why this isn't I didn't come here to learn about what's going on in politics today. I think one of the worst things that's happened with social media is incorporating parts of the world into incorporating parts of what's going on in the world into what's supposed to be a hang, or finding funny clips or whatever. These things shouldn't all be meshed together, because before this, if you wanted to, you had to turn on the news, read a newspaper, you had to actively participate in the way you digest information.
Yeah.
And now it just gets thrown in your face, in the same way that stand-up does. We get, we do this whole thing where we put out these clips and whatnot, and it's a lot of people aren't stand-up comedy fans. And so, of course, to them, they're just what the
yeah, a swipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's something they're not trying to see.
Or they're not a stand-up comedy fan, but they saw something they thought was funny, and then that does well, and it gets them, it gets whoever that person is somewhere. But then, it gets to a point where you're okay, well, did you build a fan base that you didn't want now?
Yeah.
And now you have these people who really like you, but they're going to come see you live, and then, are you going to cater to them, or are you going to do what you were doing before? How is that going to look? So, and a lot of comics do a great job of navigating this,
For comics, right? Because have you seen that transition of like YouTube kind of funny? Then they're just like, oh, I do skits and I like do all these other things. They got a following because of that.
Right.
And then they throw themselves in the stand-up game, and then it's just like, oh my God, I paid to see this guy. Like, I'd rather just watch his Instagram reels again. Like,
right.
That I've seen that happen a few times.
Yeah, and there's a weird in between, which is like the kind of thing that has happened with a few comics where like other stuff that they've done got them famous, which has kind of always been the way, by the way, with stand-up comedy. Very few comedians got famous through stand-up comedy. They were doing stand-up comedy, and that's how they got the audition for something, right? Yeah. For a TV show or a movie or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's the classic wave, right?
Right, but when you really think about it, that's what people are trying to do with their sketches and stuff right now, right? Like my buddy I opened for, his sketches blew up, but he was already doing stand-up for like 8 years or something.
Okay. When
that blew up, right? So like he had the time to go do a show, right? But that's like that weird thing where like now you're like, you have to, like, he's got a great attitude about it, which is like, hey, I'm a stand-up comic and this is this other thing that I do. I appreciate you being here, but you're going to watch my stand-up comedy. So he doesn't craft the show around his sketch stuff.
Okay.
You know what I mean? He's like letting them know. And what's great is because they're fans of his already, they're willing to give the benefit of the doubt and go like, oh, okay, what is this? And then of course, if you're, seasoned comic, you're able to like deliver. So that works out. So that's just another way to get people in seats and get them to, actually watch the show. And then what you're talking about, though, is that downside of that, which is comedy clubs, for the most part, are restaurants that have live entertainment. And then they just know that having a niche thing is easier than mixing it up, right? Like, for example, like Revel Entertainment, right? Like that's a good place where you can go see music, or you can go see comedy, or there might be some kind of event happening there or whatever. And like there's multiple things that can happen there, right? So with a comedy club, they just chose comedy because the overhead's low compared to like some of the other stuff, right? You don't need all this crazy sound equipment. You just need whatever's in the room. You don't got to do a lot of load in, load out stuff unless it's like a particular kind of show. Yeah. But so it's just a business. Like they don't give a fuck. You could be a neo-Nazi puppet that juggles and like does hypnotist stuff and magic, and like you could never tell a joke in a comedy club, but if you can fill those seats, they'll book you.
Okay.
I mean, there are some places that still have like they do want you to be funny, but like I would say, the smaller places like the Comedy Store is they're gonna sell their seats no matter what.
Yeah.
So it's not about asses and seats for them. It's about comedy. They really care about it, right?
Okay.
The Cellar in New York, these kind of iconic places. But the idea of like the comedy club, they're going to put in whoever is going to fill in those seats. And they're also not necessarily wrong for it in the sense of like
a business model.
Right. In the sense of like you're just giving someone who can do a live show a space to do it in. And typically you're a comedy club, but you might open it up to like maybe a music night or something, right?
Yeah. Karaoke night.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like a lot of clubs will have like another stage up front where there's like a bar and everything, and then like outside the showroom, and then they'll run like their open mic in there, or they'll have like an acoustic act come in and just try and run the bar like a regular place, right?
Okay.
So, but the problem is when they have them at these comedy clubs, I think that the issue is that they're not necessarily promoting it like, hey, this is going to be a stand-up comedy show. But because it is at a place that is a comedy club, people will have that misconception about it. And then of course, comics are going to be indignant about it because they're like, well, shouldn't comedy be there that night? But honestly, like, if you don't have a draw,
you have to do something.
Like, if you don't have a draw, why would they give you a night there?
Yeah.
What, so you can bring in, however many people that probably won't pay the bills for turning on the lights and paying the staff to bring them food.
Because that's like the dynamic now in Austin with the Comedy Mothership, but then you have Red Band's Club, which is the Sunset Strip, but yet that doesn't do as well with comedy all the time. So he does the other things, like they have the music stuff coming in or the karaoke and all this other stuff where, like you're saying, like, well, they're just trying to fill the seat so they can pay the venue or pay the rent or whatever the case may be. And that's like, you can't hate on it, but, you know, you got to annoy the high ceilings or whatever. That's a joke I keep hearing about that.
Well, the like, okay, so a couple of things about this. So
dun 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 dun.
So the YouTuber thing, or like people that are doing sketch stuff or whatever, I think as long as if it were done in another way to where like, because like I said, they don't like just come out and say, you know, that this is going to be stand-up comedy or something, and they don't come out and say it's not. They just could say, hey, come see so and so, right? Yeah. And then what happens is they won't have like a thing really worked out. And, you know, the club usually won't take the hit on that as often as the artist would, right?
Yeah.
So somebody might come in and suck, and then people won't come back to see them, right? And they'll be like, man, like, I really like his stuff, but, like, we went in there and it was just some fucking bullshit, you know?
Yeah, right.
But, you know, there's probably some people that are like, man, I thought I was going to go see, like, you know, something funny, you know, or
my favorite sketch or like my favorite song from him or something.
Right. And then they thought they were going to see like some kind of worked out, well rehearsed, you know, thing worth paying, you know, $30 to $50 depending on where you're at. Right.
Yeah.
So like when that happens, it does kind of put a sour taste in the fans' mouth. The artist is just they're just doing a cash grab at that point. Right. They're not really honing, and some of those dudes probably and ladies and whoever is like they're probably like honing some kind of thing. Some of them because they care about their thing, you know. Yeah. And I would feel bad for them right now, actually working on putting together like a really cool show for people. But the thing you hear the most about is these guys that come in, these like YouTuber dudes who are like, "What's up? Come in and see me do that," and then they're like just kind of skating by on, you know, like they'll put up a projector and just play videos.
Oh,
which is crazy. It's like, well, dude, you brought these people here to do that. Like
they could have stayed at home to watch those.
Yeah, that better be a hell of a meet and greet. That's the only way you're gonna get them to, like, you know what I mean? Like, you better be hanging out with them after. Like, I don't know how you expect them to like enjoy watching sketches that they could have done for free in their house. You know? But anyway, so there's an interesting thing to think about with this, though, is that, like, the way the comedy club was birthed was, like, there was only, like, people would do these, like, you know, like, the Catskills was, like, the old, like, place where Jewish people would go, upstate New York, and they would bring these guys, and they would all kind of do the same kind of, "Oh, take my wife, please," like that kind of material.
Yeah.
And then, you know, once we developed into like what we know as stand-up comedy today, you know, Bud Freeman opened the Improv, and then there was like the Comedy Store, and so like these places popped up, but they were in like cities. It was like LA, New York, right? So and you could have a show somewhere else or whatever, but like there wasn't comedy clubs all across the country. That was it. So the only way to see live comedy would be if you went to a major city, and that was like something you did when you went on vacation, right? Or if you lived in that city, obviously, but like there was no other way to do it. And then so when people would actually start to like tour this stuff, you know, that's when you could see them sometimes, right? So-and-so would come through at like this casino or this jazz club or something. You could see them, and that was like an interesting thing. And, of course, that got people thinking, like, oh, well, you know, these comedians traveling, we might as well just start opening comedy clubs. With the comedy boom of the 80s especially, that's when everybody was like, okay, we can just put clubs everywhere. So, but like everything that happens in our society, right? So there's this cash grab, right? Everybody just starts trying to do comedy and trying to open comedy clubs. So anybody with a pulse and a sport coat was a comedian, and anybody who could get a venue to let them do a show in it was a comedy club, as long as they called themselves that, right?
Yeah.
So they're oversaturated, right? And there was just too much of it. But what was happening was these people you'd go to these two major markets to get seen and potentially go have a TV show or a movie or whatever, right, and start a career. But then they would like chase the money on the road, right? All these new clubs are open, and there's these these old guys that talk about the old days, and they're like, yeah, man, sometimes people would be gone for a couple of months and you wouldn't see them, and you'd be like, hey, where you been? They're like, oh, I've been on the road. And they're like, oh, wow. And then but now they're away from the bookers, and they're away from the people who can give you a career, right? And then there was the guys, he's like, sometimes guys will be gone for years. You just
doing the road.
Yeah, and they just come back, and they're chasing the paycheck, but now they're not able to do the thing that would elevate them to that next level.
And then you hear the horror stories, right, where it's just like, hey, I was in Oklahoma and that went horrible. The comedy club only sat so many people, and yet there was nobody there, compared to like, oh, well, I did, upstate New York with the opening of a new comedy club, and that boomed way more.
Well, that's what happened at the end of the 80s going on in the early 90s was stand-up comedy as a whole started to kind of it started to dip a little bit in terms of like attendance and stuff, and it just became a thing where like there was just so much of it that people were just kind of like, okay, we're not all, the entire country can't go out every night of the week to go to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
nobody's trying to go out on a Tuesday night.
Yeah,
all the time.
And we're back on an upswing right now, which is great. But the difficult part now is like, well, how much of what we're doing is a cash grab that's going to turn people off from going to live entertainment. So I would say the bigger issue with the YouTuber thing isn't necessarily whether or not that one show goes bad or not. It's like, hey, you got some luck on the internet, and now you're trying to get your money. You kind of can't blame them. A lot of these people are like kids. If I was 19 and I blew up on the internet and somebody said, we'll give you, $8,000 to come do 4 shows. Would you say no to that to like save the integrity of comedy? No.
Yeah, you already.
You'd be like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do.
You see the potential. You're just like, yeah, but obviously I get some money and I can probably pump it into my channel or whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
So from that standpoint, you kind of can't blame them, but there is a concern, I think, especially like for people who love comedy, where you're like, well, what is this going to do in the larger scale of things? It's great that we get to have what we have right now. This is like Netflix specials, podcasts. Austin is the first really big major market to come out in a long time. I mean, I would say it was always LA, New York, and then it would be like Chicago, Austin, Atlanta, like good scenes that had clubs. But like now it's getting bigger and bigger to where like, you can actually do more comedy other places. Like, for instance, we're here right now in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I just got to do, someone like me who's not famous at all and doesn't have a following gets to do a club because there's a local club who supports local comics and wants to keep a scene that's good and then work with the bigger clubs to like, have like facilitate more comedy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that the biggest concern is like, it's not that there was just too much stand-up comedy. It was that there was the quality drops when people just keep trying to get as much money to like milk out of it as they can.
Okay.
So like, I would say that's the problem with where we're at right now. And even in stand-up, it's not even necessarily the YouTuber thing. I'm sure you've noticed there's like a trend in stand-up comedy right now where people are like kind of going for whatever it is that's going to get them seen, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is that'll get them like to pop. So people are out there just saying whatever wild shit they can think of.
Like politics is a great example. Like obviously in a blue city, you can make fun of the red conservatives, and it hits a little more because like that's a hot topic right now.
Right, but I also mean like just generally being not as thoughtful about the joke writing, right? So like anything can get a laugh if you do it right?
Yeah.
But we've kind of developed as comedians over the years into like having more of a standard for ourselves, right? Like we know what's hacky now, right? Like it's hacky to be like, oh, take my wife, please, right? Because that's this old punchline. And we also we're developing as like human beings, right? You're like, hey man, if you hate your wife, like don't be with it. What do you do? You don't like, then just like fix it. What are you doing? Like, you're just gonna write an hour about this and then like be miserable for the rest of your life? You know what I mean? Like,
is that your release?
Yeah.
When it should be an actual, just let it go, let them go.
And I mean, obviously, like some comedians, it is just an act. Like, I think it's pretty obvious. Like Anthony Jeselnik, you know, nobody's ever been like, oh, he means it.
Oh,
you know
God,
what I mean?
yeah.
But there is a contingent of comedy that's especially getting larger now, to where like you can feel it. They kind of mean it. Like, and then they will hide behind, oh, it's just a joke. And you're like, no, it's not, because you went on your podcast the next day and then you said all that stuff. You meant it. You mean the thing. Like they do this, like, oh, I ride the line on certain things, which you used to be able to do, and you could fall back on it's just a joke.
Yeah.
You know, and certain comedians, like I said, you could tell immediately, you know, it's just a joke, right? But and then certain ones you're like, oh, I kind of meant that.
Yeah,
but you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? But now we're at a point where it really is like there's comedians that'll say all this like kind of wild shit that maybe sounds like maybe they're kind of hateful, or like maybe they're like, you know, saying something like just to get a rise out of people. And you're like, okay, well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, right? You're just trying to like push buttons a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Shock humor, whatever, right?
Yeah, okay.
But then they'll go on their podcast and be like, you know,
still saying the same thing.
They'll say some ignorant shit that like you would have thought we would move past as a society. And then they're just hanging on to that. Because not every comedian is going to be like thoughtful or like really like sometimes whatever gets the laugh doesn't necessarily mean that that's good. You know what I mean? Like cruise ship comedy gets done on cruise ships because it's a lot of Midwestern people that want to go on vacation, and then they go on this boat and they're not comedy fans. So they bring on a comedian that can be very like safe and mid-level and relatable and whatever, right? So you're not going to get anything like wild comedy, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get kind of a standard thing. And it serves a purpose, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it shouldn't be held as some kind of standard for what's good, right? You recognize it as cruise ship comedy, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
But there is a thing with comedy where like you got to hold yourself to some kind of standard, man. Like,
do you believe in that whole concept of like comedy makes you think more? Like, you know, when you go out and listen to comedy, and then you like, they do touch on some pushy subjects or like something that actually is really like controversial, and then you're like, I never thought of it that way, thanks to comedy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like on the one hand, it's like a good example is like Dave Chappelle, Killing Him Softly, great special he did in DC in like 2000 or 2001. Probably one of my favorite specials, you know. And you know, he covered race relations and issues between like policing and the black community. Like Chris Rock did a lot of great stuff with that early on too. But what sucks is people I grew up with that I saw turn into like people who didn't get the message. They just laughed at the jokes, right?
Okay.
But I got the message. So part of me is like, damn, like jokes aren't going to fix anything, you know, like we're not going to evolve in any way societally because these people will laugh about the joke but not take into account what he was trying to say with that joke.
Okay.
But then I think about the people that did, right? So like I'm one of those people. I grew up on Carlin and Pryor and like Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle, where they're like saying these things. So I grew up understanding like the perspective of these black comedians that are giving me a perspective that I didn't live, right?
Yeah.
So like there's not necessarily, I don't want to say a responsibility there, because there's different kinds of comedy. Nobody would want Dave Attell to be responsible, but he's also not. There's no hidden thing behind that. He's being as silly and wild as possible, you know, and just saying like, you know, whatever he knows is going to get the laugh. But also that's because that's him and that's his style. When you take on these societal topics and like say these things that present as if you're being like, it's just innocuous. Like it presents as like, oh, who cares? It's just jokes. But I was talking about this with some comedians today. Like look in your comment section, like that following that you have or whatever. Like there's comedians who say stuff that I vehemently disagree with, right? And you look in their comment sections, and it'll be like filled with people who are like hateful, like racist, angry, sexist, homophobic, whatever, right? And there'll be a million comments in there, and sometimes those are trolls, but then sometimes it's like, well, why do you think you're connecting with these people? Like, why do you think what you're saying right now makes these people feel so comfortable to say that, yeah, because this, right? So, like, either you don't mean it and you're trying to make it as funny as possible, and for some reason you missed a part of that let them know this is meant to be in jest or satirical, right? And now you have 400 people in your comments being like, yeah, they do that or something. You know what I mean? Okay. Like, so either you missed some kind of connection there that was supposed to reach out at them, or you were clearly joking and they just didn't get that, which is, I think, where a lot of those people think they're at. Okay. They think they're clearly joking. And it's like, I don't know how clear it was because they believe you. Yeah. You know, and it's a lot of people that do feel that way, right? Yeah. And then, you know, the only other thing would be to actually like think about, well, how else can I tell this joke? And I think there's a lot of comedians who feel as though they're like, I can't say anything anymore while they're saying the thing, and then they're being extremely thoughtless about how that's being executed, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
I don't know. It felt wordy, but
it's pretty clear.
Okay.
To a sense where it's just like, I mean, if you put it out there, like, you're putting it out there in the universe in a sense where like people are going to get it or people are going to think that it's offensive. Right. But yet when you say it in a certain way, it's literally your own thought process of like, oh, you probably do think that way. Like I've seen you do some jokes about it too, where you're just like, guy comes up and is like, I kill my wife, and you're just like, whoa, that's not a joke. Like that sounds serious, and you probably should talk about it with somebody else besides making that out in the universe, what is like very.
Oh, and I do want to be clear about this though. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be offensive or shouldn't say a thing that offends someone, right? I'm saying that, like, what is your purpose for that? What is the motivation, right? Yeah. You're trying to be as funny as possible. And I think there's a lot of people who are equating, we're getting back to the shock thing again, where like people are equating with like saying wild shit as if that's somehow a punchline. No, dude, write a joke. Like, being shocking and offensive is not a punchline. It might get people to laugh some, but that's not a joke. Like, you know, like a fart can get people to laugh. It's not a joke. You wouldn't, if somebody farted, you wouldn't say, "Hey, good joke." Yeah, you know what I mean? Okay. So it's not that you can't say things like, everybody's going to be offended about something. You know, there's nothing that anybody would not be offended by. You'd have to be a total sociopath to feel nothing. That's
what I've I can't remember exactly who said this, but they said, no matter what, one person is going to be offended. Sure. Even though it could be the best joke that you've ever done and it does a great laugh, one person in this whole entire world is going to be offended by it one way or another. So I can see where that is like, I mean, you find the funny in it, you tell the joke, whatever the case may be, somebody's going to get offended. And that's not the worst.
But you just have to be a well-rounded and emotionally intelligent enough person to go like, was I right to do it? Right. Yeah. So like, I have some stuff that a lot of people wouldn't like. Right. Yeah. But I also know that no matter what anyone says about that, I feel comfortable with where I'm at with that. Yeah. So, and the people I'm talking about probably feel comfortable with their stuff too. Fine. I would suggest maybe looking into that a little more.
Makes you reevaluate why you're offended too, right? Like, oh, sure. why would I be offended by something like that when everyone else was laughing about it? Like, that kind of comes into play too.
And it's just it's really just a matter of like, if it's making people laugh, like, that's great. But like, you really do have to ask yourself, like, is what I'm saying going to actually is it going to offend someone because of their sensibilities, or is what I'm saying actually cruel and wrong and like didn't need to be said, and I did it for an easy laugh from the people in the crowd that I could get that laugh out of? Like, like, is it necessary? Like, if the only way you can be funny is to upset people, I mean, that doesn't necessarily make you a good comic. Like, you're a one-trick pony at that point.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like, for example, like if I make fun of religion and somebody's upset about that, I'm okay with that, because like I'm not saying you're a bad person or something. You know what I mean? I'm saying that from my perspective, this is how I feel about that, right? And they might get upset with me, right? And I know in my heart I can go, hey, I mean no ill will towards you, but this is how I feel about this thing, right?
Yeah.
Because a religion is a mindset. You know, you're not inherently that, right? You're not or not a mindset, but it's a belief structure, right? Or your job. You're not your job, right? But if somebody is gay and you are using gay as a punchline over and over again to the point where it's like, does this person like hate gay people? This seems like you're doing this a lot, right? Yeah. And they might not, and that's fine. And some people do that very well, you know. Some people can make those jokes and nobody gets upset with them. And then some people, they do, because there's something you're doing that's making people go like, "Oh, I think he kind of means it." Like, most people know that a comedy show is a comedy show. Like, very few people like just go like, "Oh, I'm offended." Like, that's kind of like a made up thing. It's not real. Like, there's always somebody, right? But I think if you're regularly saying things that are meant to be offensive to get a laugh, that's not the same as like writing a good joke. So that's all I'm saying is like we have to like hold ourselves to some kind of standard. You know, you can be those guys. You know, they've always been around. You can keep doing that. You know, like
you hear it at like the water cooler or whatever, right? You're at
sure.
work and you're that guy's like, God, I hate this job. Nothing but blah 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 always happens in my life, and then you're just like, well, that's funny because it does, and that's your problem, you know?
Yeah, it's just like when you take that and if you say a bunch of stuff about like if you're a white dude, you say a bunch of stuff about black people, right? In a joke, and it feels insensitive or maybe racist, right? But then everything you do outside of that in your life, on your podcast, whatever, none of that reflects it, right? I would say Mark Norman's a great example of this. Mark Norman's got a bunch of race jokes, and very few people would ever go like, oh, he hates black people, right? But there are people who do stand-up comedy who say stuff that makes you go like, man, I don't know, this feels weird. And you listen to them on a podcast and you go like, oh no.
This is all coming together now.
They kind of sound like they mean that too. There, like, and if you don't keep up with the comedy world, you know, you might not put all those things together. So the fallback is to just let it slide, right? And you go like, because very few people would say something terrible and then mean it, because you don't. If you're a terrible person, you're probably trying to hide that, right? Yeah. But yeah, I do think that we do have to have some kind of standard. Is all I'm saying. Just
standard.
Just have a standard, man. Yeah. Like it doesn't all have. You don't have to be. You know, you don't have to be perfect or anything. But like, recognize that like especially when you're somebody who people are listening to, like a lot of people are not that smart. People are pretty easily
manipulated or just
and led around. Yeah. Like people. I used to think like there's no responsibility to any of it. Like it's like whatever they're gonna do, and I'm allowed to do my thing. And I still feel that way about some stuff, but I do feel like once you become like a voice to people, like now, if they're doing stuff because you say it, like you do hold some level of like accountability. Yeah, you're not responsible for their actions, but something you're doing is affecting other stuff, you know? Yeah. Like somebody's looking to you for guidance, and you didn't ask for that. But now that you are in that position, maybe don't make the world a worse place.
No, but that's a good example for like music. Like I think I don't want to sound like preachy or whatever, but I think with the way that I've been playing for like the amount of time that I have, I've touched enough people to know like you can get good and play very well is if you practice or do the job of playing a lot. And it's not one of those things where I'm like, if you don't practice, you suck. Or they just like, they follow me because I'm good, and I let them know they can be just as good if you keep playing.
Right.
And if you just keep trying and you put it out there, you will eventually be good at it. But I've heard the other aspect of it too, is just like, it's just doing it. Like, you don't even have to be the person who like, that's what's weird though, is comedy is a little different, where you kind of are putting it out there for people to hear, but there can be the best musician ever who's never released anything in his life. Who's just sits in his room and plucks on a guitar, plays the drums, or whatever the case may be, and is a humble, amazing musician, but he doesn't have to show the world how good he is. But that's not the same with comedy, though. Is like, you kind of have to put yourself out there, because you can write all the jokes you want to write. Well, see, now I'm kind of contradicting myself, because like, how do writers end up doing something like that? Like, so like, one of the biggest things that I've always loved is like sitcoms that have writers that really are good at writing jokes for the show, but yet most of the time you don't know any of these writers. You just love that, oh, in Malcolm in the Middle, Malcolm said this funny thing and that was hilarious. Now, that's amazing. But they're still in a room writing, doing it on their own.
Yeah, but the process of like getting someone to read your stuff and then hiring you is like pretty, like, it isn't like I was sitting at home and I wrote a bunch of jokes and then I mailed them in and now I have a job. So like,
but
what you're saying is a correct analogy, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You're not contradicting yourself.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult thing. So yeah, with stand up, there is no do it on your own. You do it in front of people and they're going to take it how they take it. And then you just have to ask yourself, like, you know, is what I'm doing making me happy? Is it making other people happy? And is it valuable to me? And like, not just doing it just because, like, you know, maybe this is too heady and too like out there or too like macro, you know, but like, I really do think that like part of your life should be about like how much of it is affecting the rest of the world. Like it's a simple thing would be like the idea of like, I don't know, litter, right? Or like speeding, right? Like you're speeding in your car. No one's on the road, right? Doesn't really hurt anybody. You're willing to incur the risk of like
something happening.
Ticket. Yeah. But if you're in bumper to bumper traffic and you're driving like a crazy person, you know, you might hurt somebody. And it can be real simple to go like, I know what I'm doing. I'm not worried about it. And so you don't worry about it.
That's what I think is funny too, is like, okay, you can be that person who's like, nobody's seeing what I'm doing while you're speeding. So that's your own personal thing doing it. But
you're not hurting anybody.
You do it in traffic. Everyone else is pissed. But what's not to say one person sitting in the car is like, that guy's so cool. He doesn't care about what's going on. I wish I was like that guy. Like that brings into that dynamic too, right? Like,
sure, but objectively as a society, you would go like, hey, people have kids in their cars and their own bodies also.
Yeah.
Maybe don't drive like a lunatic so we can have nice things. And it's like, it's not saying you can't go drive like a lunatic. You can go drive like a lunatic. Just don't do it where you might kill somebody.
See, but that's what's so weird though, is like, again, everybody could be like, oh, that guy's an idiot, that guy's dumb, he's gonna hurt somebody, something bad's gonna happen. But then there's that one guy who's like, probably has a really shitty life, like 9 to 5 thing, he like hates it, and he's just like, God, I hate being in traffic. And then that guy's cool, at least he's living by the beat of his own drum. Like, sure, there still will be that kind of thought process.
Even me who just said the thing, there's a part of me who's like, hell yeah, dude. Like, but also I recognize that just because something's cool, like I look at the larger aspect of it, right? Like, I think it would be so freeing to just be on like a motorcycle, just like bob and weave out of traffic and just go like 120 miles an hour. That sounds awesome, and it is. But like, you know, if you cause an accident because of your recklessness of one thing that you were doing, right? So like, and of course that's a physical thing versus like
the comedy thing.
Yeah, and I think we're at a weird place in history where like we're kind of having to come to grips with like how much of what we say truly affects other people. Yeah. You know, and every person is responsible for their own actions. but are you participating in a culture that is pushing ideas, or are you participating in a thing that maybe is, I don't know, making other people feel real comfortable with being shitty? You know, like there's those T-shirts that's like, I'm an asshole and I don't care.
Assholes live forever.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like I don't know whose merch that is. I forget, it's somebody's, but like it can be like a clever thing, but like when you really break down people and like who we are and why we do what we do, the only reason why anybody would ever call themselves an asshole is to protect themselves from the emotional pain of having to be a person. He who makes a beast out of himself, you know, gets rid of being a man, right?
Yeah.
So like if you go, oh, I'm this way, none of that affects me, right?
Yeah.
And so like it's not true, you're just burying it all down, sure, but like you present yourself to the world that way to protect yourself. You're not actually that dude, because again, if you were, you'd be a sociopath.
Yeah, you'd be more of what you actually are.
And you know what a sociopath would do? If he's like that deep down inside, they have to mask it and pretend to be a nice guy or somebody else, right?
Oh, Jesus.
They got to pretend like everything's fine all the time so that everybody will be good to them, because they know deep down they're monsters.
Yeah,
right?
And they don't want to be called out for something like that. Or,
yeah.
But then again, right, there's that people that don't care. Like, that's why they do have, you know, that T-shirt on, or that, like...
Not all sociopaths.
Yeah, not all, but...
No, but, like, I just mean, like we're at this weird point of, like, human history where we're, like, kind of evolving out of, like, these old ways of thinking and realizing that, like, we're capable of being better than we were, you know? Like there's a thing where, you know, where somebody will go like, man, that's just how nature is, you know, to like defend like bad shit that people do.
Okay.
They'll go, man, that's just human nature.
Animals kill animals.
Yeah. And then, or, you know, or they'll be like, it's like, yeah, but like they don't have a cerebral cortex to have abstract thought.
Yeah. Or process the downfall of something.
Yeah. They're just thriving off instinct. Right. So, and we don't do that. So anytime anybody goes, oh, it's just human nature, it's like, it's just this or that, you're trying to excuse these things. We're capable of being better. And so if you're not, it shouldn't be like just dismissed as, oh, they just did this thing because it's like, no, you're a person. Get control of yourself. You have the ability. You chose not to. And then,
that's the outcome.
Yeah. So this idea that like that we're all just animals, so we did this and that. It's like, yeah, well, we're also animals that like built the Eiffel Tower. Like, grow up.
Yeah, there's some.
Own your shit. If you did a fucked up thing, there's no excuse. You got to own your shit.
Yeah.
I've done fucked up stuff. Everybody has. If you haven't, you're a baby or you're lying.
Yeah, yeah, or you're lying. Yeah.
It's just a part of like growing as a person, and like and yeah, there's ramifications to it, and it sucks, and it's like it's just the way it is. But like, there to pretend as though to treat everybody else like shit so that you don't have to feel bad is like not a thing anymore. Like, I think we're slowly getting rid of that, and there's a big chunk of society that's still holding on to it, and I don't think a lot of them know. You know, it's like a evolution. It's like a thought evolution for society. So like, there's a lot of people that aren't there. You know, and you know, we might not get there for a really long time. That's my guess.
Yeah,
people aren't great. Some are, some aren't. But like, I really do. I think that we are at a changing point, and it's tough because, like, there'll be that thing like, what's that saying? It's like, hard times
make hard men or something.
Yeah, it's like soft men create hard times, and then hard times create hard, whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? The fucking, I wish we could pull it up, but we don't need to do that. Yeah. Anyway, it's basically saying like if you're too soft, things get ruined, and then everybody gets too like real hard. But then if you're too hard, but like it doesn't allow for like nuance. Like, you can be a protective, like this idea that like dudes have to be this certain way. You can be like a protective dude who's also emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, just because you listen to your girlfriend doesn't make you a pussy.
Yeah.
like this idea that you can't be like a multifaceted human being. You know, like Jason Ellis is a great example, right? Professional skateboarder, MMA fighter. He's a comedian. He had a talk show. one of the toughest dudes around. I know this dude personally. You know, he's been through a lot. He's a cool fucking guy. And that dude came out as bi, right? And does jokes about it. And Jason Ellis, very few people would ever in person talk some shit about that to him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because
his credentials.
He could fuck you up.
Yeah.
I think that kind of breaks people's brains. But also, it's just that, you know, he had the courage to like kind of just let himself be himself, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that don't feel that. And then like the way we run a society is a part of that, right? So like just because there's soft people out there doesn't mean everybody's got to be hard. Like how about like if you're somebody who's a little bit, you know, you're a little bit more like tough or whatever, or like, you know, maybe look out for those people, you know? You don't need to make you're going to tell me every single time you saw a person who was like, you thought they were too soft, you thought you just like make them do some push-ups and be a hard ass.
That's
like,
going to make them hard, yeah.
Yeah, no. Like, people just are like, have a certain way of being. Like, let those people be them, you be you. Try to make everybody just not fucking miserable. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at is like, I'm just, like, everything I say and do, I try to keep that in mind. And I talk about it in my act a little bit about like the kind of people who are telling everybody else what to do are the same people who are like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're doing the thing,
yeah.
you know? Like I talk about people that are like, you know, involving themselves in shit. Like they're mad that like women are on OnlyFans and you're like, dude, it's a paywall. Like you're just mad at women because they won't fuck you or whatever. You know what I mean? Like dig a little deeper. This feeling comes from somewhere. Why are you mad some stranger
is doing something?
And they try to make it sound like, oh, it's like everybody does this thing. And it's like we have social media, so you see more people doing
than there
that,
actually is.
You see the ones who are doing it, and it might seem like a lot. There's 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
Or like almost, or whatever we're at, right? Billions.
And I like that thing where it's like even if 1% is doing what you say is doing, that's only like 8,000 people. Like that's not everybody. That's 1% of 8 billion.
I don't think 1%. I don't think 8,000 is the correct number.
80,000? 800,000?
No.
I think it's close to an 8,000.
Okay. Anyway,
yeah, in that sense,
whatever the number. But the point is that you're making
1%
right.
is still a very small amount of what everyone is seeing.
Yeah,
and that's what everyone is basing it off of. That I see it. Oh, look, I see it all the time. And you're just like, dude, you're only seeing 1% of what's really going on in the world.
Yeah, it's like anytime anybody gets worked up about anything, that comes from somewhere, right? So like I do that bit about the workout thing and like how I saw the homeless guy who was like working out for tips, and then the way that bit started was me shitting on people who work out and workout culture, and then I see the homeless guy working out for money, and I'm like, I'd never work out for money. I'd be sucking dicks before I'd be fucking working. And so like it gets a good laugh, but like, you know, the evolution of that joke started as me mocking workout culture, which some of it's still cringe and goofy, but like a lot of that is good and it's like helping people stay healthy and like giving people purpose or whatever. And so the evolution of that through me growing as a person was like I had to change that joke to where I go like I make fun of the OnlyFans thing, like the guys who are mad about OnlyFans, and then I go I had my moment where I was mad about something that didn't affect me in any way, right? Where like, you know, I saw this Men's Health magazine where this guy's, and I realized why I was upset with this guy. I had my OnlyFans moment. I was like, look at this asshole just doing this for money.
Yeah.
Like I don't do stand up, you know?
Money, yeah.
So, I mean, I won't do the whole bit, but like that's the premise behind it is like, yeah, you gotta realize like what these things are and where they come from. So like it was in hindsight pretty weird to see a homeless dude finding a way to eat and then being like, fuck that guy. Like, like why are you being such an asshole, Zach? You know? So like checking yourself instead of like just doubling down on every single thing you've ever said and done. It's like, do you want to grow as a person? You know, do you want to be a little better? Do you want, you know, have a better quality of life? Don't be a miserable fuck. You know, you got to be alive for however long. Maybe find a way to, you know, not make it miserable for you and everybody else.
Yeah, and make it last as long as it can, right? Because, I mean, you can offend somebody and it just be like, oh, well, guess what? I'm going to beat you up for it. And then you're just like, it was a joke, or, oh, I was just doing it for the laugh. And then all of a sudden you're just in a different situation now.
But again, did you make the joke did you make the joke to where someone would want to beat you up? Or did that person misconstrue you trying to be funny? Because just because you did it in a comedy club and you called it a joke doesn't mean they don't have the right to be upset. It's like when people do crowd work and say fucked up shit to people. And you're watching it sometimes and you're like, Jesus Christ, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You got to do more show after this? Like, you don't get carte blanche because you have a microphone.
Yeah.
Like, you got to, you have some responsibility to, like, entertain that audience. And, like, someone could get up there and do something to you.
I mean, you see it all the time. Like, I've seen those clips where they're just like, you know, they offended somebody, then they start coming towards the stage, and you're just like,
yeah, it
was a joke, but that still doesn't stop that.
Yeah, and the majority of those people, I think if you're someone who's just prone to violence, like your initial reaction to something upsetting you is immediately to violence.
Then that's something personal.
Then, yeah, and you were probably already going to do that. So those people, I feel like the joke, honestly, when it comes to that, the joke probably doesn't matter that much. I think they were going to do it regardless.
They're going to just,
However,
what do you mean sliced bread?
Yeah. However, like, to elicit any kind of response from somebody that is making them upset, sometimes it's because, you know, you said something and it's sparking something, and then they're like, they're mad and they don't know what it is, but they're mad, you know, like, and that's that whole, like, check your shit thing. But then sometimes, like, you see comedians, like, say and do some pretty fucked up shit, and you're like, yeah, man, I don't know, maybe you deserve to get hit.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be doing that. I don't think anybody should, you know, violence is only the answer to people who are being violent, in my opinion, you know. Obviously there's a part of me that's like, look, we're going to get rid of these motherfuckers. Like,
how do you got to get them off stage one way.
But, you know, I say that in jest, obviously. But like, yeah, there is like that whole thing of people feeling like because you're joking or because you have a microphone, you can just say whatever you want, and it's not true. Yeah. Like, there's a real world out there, you know, like being on stage. You see open micers do it sometimes, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
this is a bar. There's no security at this. This isn't a comedy club.
Yeah,
you're at a bar.
You're yelling. That's what you're doing.
Yeah,
you're yelling at people.
If someone and then also you're like, sometimes you see a comedian do it and somebody starts yelling and back at him, and you're looking at it and you're like, I don't even know if I'm going to jump in on this. I feel like they kind of deserve to get hit. You know? Like,
that makes sense.
But like, yeah, I just, that's kind of my feeling about that is just, you really need to consider like how considerate you want to be. This idea that you can only be funny by like saying
shocking things,
or like, you know, being negative or whatever. It's like there's nothing wrong with it, but you know, if it's to the point where that's your whole thing, like you see comedians, like their whole thing is like, yeah, and then this, and you're like, and it's like an hour of them just complaining about like pronouns or something, and you're like, dude, this is it? Also, you don't think this topic's kind of covered by now?
Yeah, that's true.
you don't think there's like enough comedians covering like you can do it, you know, write the joke, whatever, but like, do you want to have like some kind of standard for yourself? Like, you're gonna just write the joke everybody else is working on? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's what's hard to think about too, is like, are you writing a joke that other people already are writing?
Right.
And then if you think of the vast array of comics out there, it's like somebody's writing about it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just be like, oh, this is hot stuff right now, no one's talking about this. But yet most of the time, anything, somebody's thinking or writing about it. Like,
I mean, and there's those things, like, you can make it funny or have your own unique take on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, are you doing it because like these are real people you're talking about? Like, I had to realize that with the workout thing. Like, I met my shift with that was I met this guy who was like a personal trainer who did like workout videos and stuff, and like he was the most positive, kind, happy person I think I've ever met. I mean, he was just so nice. And I was thinking about that bit while I'm talking to this guy, and I was like, man. And I was looking at his content and everything, and it was all like, it was nothing douchey or mean. You know, it was all just like how to help people be healthy. And like, looking at it, I'm like, ugh. The way I tell that joke, this guy could hear that and think it was about him. Because here's the thing, it was about him. Anybody who worked out and then made a video about that, the original joke, I was making fun of that. Like, and it's because like I wasn't dealing with my own feelings about it, right? So I was taking that out on that person.
That's interesting.
So then other people do that with a bit, they'll go like, meh, and then like, and it's tough because some stuff I really don't like, and then I gotta kind of like check on.
Yeah. So, why is it coming out in that kind of sense? Yeah. Like I'm in the same sense right now where I'm just like obviously going through the breakup and stuff. I'm just like, I'm gonna just bash on girls and that they don't want. But then I'm thinking about it's like, why am I getting so heated up because it's just one person, right? And then that one person shouldn't reflect how I feel about other people, other things that are happening in my life.
If we could get all the dudes who are falling for this like this whole like hustle culture, like, find a quality woman type, like all these like scammer type, not scammer, but like they're very like huckster kind of videos, where like what you just said is like so like spot on for that, where you went through that journey, right?
Yeah.
You're like, you knew you could write about that, because it's something you're feeling,
and I can complain or whatever the case may be,
and you might even be able to make it super funny, but then you're like, well, how much of this, like, am I being honest about this feeling?
Yeah.
Right? Am I going to write this and just say all this awful stuff about women as a whole when I'm mad at one woman who made me feel this way? Because you feel insecure, you feel heartbroken, you feel defeated, you get all these bad feelings, and sometimes the way to feel better is you take it out on other people, you know? It's just the way humans are, But to catch it beforehand and go like, oh, there's more to it than that, right?
I'm getting emotionally charged for things that I'm seeing that everybody probably deals with.
Exactly. Yeah. And then to take out whatever happened in that situation on women as a whole, which are just other people.
Yeah.
Like that's that other thing that then this is what I mean about like having some kind of like, not only for yourself, but like for society as a whole, like, do you want to just present these things just because you thought of it? Just because you thought of something funny, like now everybody's got to, like deal with it, when you're watching a comic and you're like, this seems like they're going through something.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I get it. I get it. Yeah. And you see it like, that's what's funny about like the difference between open micers and people that are getting established more with like features and like headliners and stuff. Like they're not portraying their energy in such a negative way that they're not getting booked for these reasons. Like that's why they're getting booked more and they're doing more, because they're finding the little things that they're like, well, this does bug me, but I'm going to make it so it's funny. Like I'm not making fun of Jake for anything, but he's short. So he knows making fun of short people in his own sense is because that's what he goes through.
Yeah.
And how many people go through that all the time? Like when my friend heard a bunch of Jake's jokes about being short, he's like, oh my God, I deal with that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what made it funny about it, is because they're going through that same thing.
Yeah. But you notice what he didn't do, which is
bash on them.
Like bash on people who like make fun of short dudes or like some or
tall people in general.
Or that's what I meant. Yeah, not make fun of short dudes, because then he'd have the right?
Yeah.
You're like why are these people mad about short dudes? Like, and then that's a bit, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, these people that like that he's not like just going fuck you because you're tall.
Yeah.
It's like, why would, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like they were just, that's just who they were.
That's who they grow up to be. Yeah. That's what happened in their life.
And honestly, every time someone complains about women to the extent that some of these people do when they're upset, like party is just like, I think you just like dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you really don't like women.
That's
like, and that's fine. But like, don't be mean about it.
Yeah.
Just go be with a dude.
Go find your own meaning in life,
or be alone.
Yeah.
If you need to be alone, maybe you don't like anybody. Maybe you only love yourself.
Yes, there you go.
But no, I'm glad to hear you say that, because like it's a process, and I think especially when you're younger, like, I wrote a lot of stuff back in the day that, I look back at and I'm like, whew,
cringe.
Whew.
Yeah.
Thank God there wasn't social media. The shit that I said back in the day, dude, not great.
That's what's crazy too, is that like the social media kind of drives you in a certain way too. Like if you see a bunch of stuff that's negative on social media, then you're like, oh, I can make fun of that because people make fun of that.
Right.
And you see it in the comment section and stuff, and you're just like, this is going to be perfect. Everybody hates this. And then you do it and you're just like, nobody hates this. Like it's just the way that they conditioned you. Well, and that's another shitty thing about social media, right? Is that like they want you to click and interact with it, because it makes you angry. Like, you don't see wholesome videos and wholesome stuff as much as you would negative stuff because it's just not that appealing. You're just like, oh, well, you know.
Well, because the algorithm's just based on watch ratio and clicks and all that, right? And likes and everything. So, like, if something's getting viewed a lot because it's shocking, it's hard not to look at the train wreck, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're just scrolling and then all of a sudden there's some crazy thing happening or whatever it is or some big negative thing.
Yeah, fights, like, whatever.
It's hard to not watch it because it's interesting. You know, we're you know, on the animal level, there is a part of us that it just goes, huh? Right? Like, what's that? Like, it's hard to not do it, and then to be aware of it. You know, like, it's difficult. So, like, but again, you know, we have to exercise some agency here,
some control.
Yeah,
I find that funny. Like, one of the things that I found so interesting is the whole interview with Cat Williams on Club Shay Shay. Like, it was so negative and, like, he was, like, bashing on people and, like, all that stuff. But that's what made it entertaining. Like, people were watching that because he was, like, talking all of this shit and stuff.
It's marketing 101, dude.
Yeah, and that's crazy, though. Yeah. That's so crazy. Because then you take it into account, like, how much of the stuff that he said was true, how much shit wasn't, like.
Well, but this is what's so upsetting about the way that humans are, right? And how kind of simplistic we can be. This, like, this is what I mean about what we say and do and show people is it really does affect things. Like, the idea that we're all working in a vacuum is not real. Like, everything we do affects everything around us, everything we say. So, like, he goes on and he does that, right? And then because of that, everybody knows who he is now again,
yeah.
Excuse me, or already knows. But it reinvests him in Cat Williams, right? And then Cat Williams, what happens next? He goes on Rogan, and then what happens after he goes on Rogan? He books a tour. It's just it's a press move. Like, he might have genuinely felt all that stuff and wanted to say it or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's how simple humans are. Like, you could not mean all that stuff. Go say it, and now you are back on whatever trajectory you want to be on.
Okay.
Because people are that easy to manipulate, which is where it comes with comedy, where it's like, you know, do you want to be the guy who works hard and writes good jokes and does what you can to make your career happen, or do you want to say something shocking and then a bunch of people see it and you get to book a tour and now you get to, like, you know? So it's not like you can't do it. You can do it, but I mean, look at what happened after that, right? He goes and he does that. And then everybody's talking about all this stuff. And then the people who aren't really smart enough to see that that's really just a not political, but a
publicity
stunt. It's a publicity stunt. That's all that was. It's a publicity stunt. Even if he meant it. It's like, well, you can mean all that and not go on a podcast or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you can just say that to your friends or something, or, you know, but, like, and that's also the problem with, like, where we're at now with entertainment. Like, you know, what is legitimately meant to be hard worked, a thing that people worked hard on and want to present as a product, versus what are people just doing as a publicity stunt or to make money or whatever, right? So, like, that, it does put us in this interesting time of where, like, you know, what is the motivation behind these people and what are they doing, right?
Yeah, what anybody does.
Yeah. Like true crime's a good example of this, right? We have all these true crime podcasts and documentaries and everything, and some of them, you know, they really treat the material respectfully, and they talk to the families and they get the okay, and they do all this work to make sure that it's done in a way that, like, shares the information but is respectful to the victims.
Okay.
That's not the norm for it, though. Like, most of it is, like, you know, they'll have, like, some kind of crazy music and then drag it out for as long as they can to, like, you know, make some money off it. Like, and unless, if you do something about, you know, people getting murdered, unless you're donating the proceeds to those families or something, or to some foundation, you know, I mean, what, so you just So you just took this thing that happened to these real people and then made a product out of it?
Yeah, if not encouraged other people to try to do it. That's the funny part that I've always heard is like people watch the true crime so that when it does happen to them, they can be like, I saw it on a true crime and I know how to win it. So it's funny. Or the joke where they're like, they're just conditioning like women and stuff to like be careful with stuff like this, or you know, just depends. But
yeah, and I mean that's fine. But like when you see like there's an entire genre now based on real people's murders, you're like, oh, like something's wrong here. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like to.
But it does both. It does both, right? It educates people and like helps them like deal with it and probably help get away from something like that. Or it encourages where it's just like, that's exactly how I'm being treated and I think I'm going to do something about it.
Well, I think like the biggest thing is, I mean, the majority of it is
educate and help.
But here's the thing. It's just about how you do it. It's the same with joke telling, same with anything else. Like, it's totally possible to tell the story of someone who had this horrific thing happen to them, or multiple people, or whatever, right? It's totally doable to tell that story in a way to where the families are okay. And by the way, if they're not okay with it, go on to something else.
Yeah.
But it's a thing that is doable, and some people do it, and then some people don't. And it's like, why would you? There's other ways to make money, and money's not everything.
Yeah.
You don't need to make a thing to make some money, you know, that's going to like upset some people and validly, you know. Maybe somebody doesn't want to relive how their sister was murdered, you know, or whatever. Like, these are not we're working on trying to have a little empathy in the society, and it's slowly trickling in. But yeah, I think that the content and money and like trying to make TV shows out of things and all this stuff, I think it is gonna create, or it is creating this weird culture right now to where we're having to like navigate it and go like, well, what is, you know, what is valuable versus what is ethical.
Okay.
You know, and can those things work together? And they can, but it takes thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
So
that's but I mean, that's not happening that much, right? Because you see like news sources and stuff, like they try to get people angry and like upset, even in themselves. Like, you know, you have two branches of news companies, and they're like, well, you're reporting on this story, I'm gonna just one up you and make it worse, or whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah. They'll let this country tear itself apart so they can sell some more ads. They'll make the clickbait title so people will read it for an ad that people mostly don't even notice. You know, it's like a little banner thing on the side of a website or whatever, you know, or whatever the ad is. That's driving the entirety of our online culture is ads. You know, very little of it's stuff that people pay for. At least that's direct to customer, you know. If ads are paying for everything and you get paid through them, then the incentive to do like a clickbaity type thing is so high that of course they're going to say whatever like wild thing is going to make you. It's like the local news thing, you know. Could there be a poison in your house? Yeah. Find out more at 11. And you're like,
what kind of poison?
Yeah,
where?
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so of course, you know, people freak out and then they tune in at 11, right? But now it's how to get them to click on that article or whatever, right? How to get them to
stay stuck on the scroll. Like,
and whatever it is that'll bring in revenue. So then they got, you know, people pitted against each other now so that they can sell, you know, you can't even say magazines or papers anymore. Now what is it? So you can sell the ads that are on some Instagram reel.
Yeah, some article, which is
Yeah. So and I think it can be difficult. Like me even knowing this about all that, I can still find myself getting sucked into it and going like, oh no, like I'm in the, like I have to catch myself and go like, oh, what am I doing? I'm like falling down because even stuff I agree with, if I look at it objectively and I take my feelings out of it and look at it, even stuff I agree with is written in a way that feels scummy or like disingenuous or like or giving like cannon fodder to like or like giving ammo, to the other side, right? So like something that I might disagree with, they might write a headline that's so antagonistic that it gets them all riled up. Now they think that like, they're out to get us or whatever, right? And then we do that to them, right? So then everybody thinks the other side's out to get them. Meanwhile, it's some 20-something-year-old working at, sitting behind a keyboard going, how do I do this to keep my job? Like,
how do I get more out of it?
Right, because you're rewarded for that, right? So like, there's literally like people, trying to figure out the best way to get you to click on a thing, and then everyone's reading that as if that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Like you go to the supermarket and somebody's just waiting there for you who disagrees with you politically. It's like, that's not how it is. Now people can get worked up, and this is a part of that responsibility thing, part of that thoughtfulness, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who's more weak-minded, it's like the Star Wars thing with the Jedi mind trick, right? You remember when he tries it and like it doesn't work on Watto or whatever, and he tries to do the Jedi mind trick. He's like, oh, that brainwash stuff doesn't work on me. Like it works on the weak-minded, right? So like people see that stuff, and if you're not media literate or if you're not conscious of the way that these things operate, you see a headline and you go, oh no, that's true.
Yeah.
And then that works you up. And then you have people do stuff like, January 6th. You have people do stuff like, show up to some politician's house trying to kill him, and
the border crisis, all that stuff.
Sure, yeah, any of that stuff. Like if you really spent the time researching and doing all that, which most people are not taught how to do correctly in school. So, media literacy is already a problem, much less how to actually find documented sources and stuff. Imagine the average person.
Right. They're just
going down the rabbit hole to find out. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, it's all BuzzFeed. That's like whatever I just saw on BuzzFeed is truth, and I hold it true.
Exactly. And so no matter which side of it you're on, it's done in a way that's meant to sell something to you. So none of it can be trusted in a true sense, and you have to really try to like take an objective viewpoint of this stuff and go like, what does this actually mean, or like what does this actually entail, and how big of a deal is it really, right? Like the drag brunch thing is a great example, right? Like these places in Texas and all across the country, but like there was these like Proud Boys that would like show up like with guns and stuff to some of these events, and meanwhile, like people are like worked up about the drag thing, but when you look at it from an objective viewpoint, this is a privately owned business that is putting on a some entertainment, and some of them had like all ages on it, and that's what got people worked up.
Yeah.
But these are adults who had children
making the decision.
Yeah, and also that's theoretical. Nobody even knows like nobody even knows if someone is bringing their kid. But also, if they do, that's their choice to do it. That's their kid. Like, would you want one of these people rolling up with a gun to something you're doing because they disagree with you? Like, and also you don't know them. You don't know that kid. Like, and they're like, maybe their thought process is like, well, I don't want that kid's thing to spill over to my kid or whatever. But it's like, well, do you want the freedom or not?
Yeah.
You love freedom until it has to do with something that makes you uncomfortable, like a dude in a dress.
Yeah.
Like maybe relax a little and see that like there's some pretty big political factors that are pushing these narratives and pushing these things, and it just so happens that they all really spark up during election season. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like you can feel the way you feel about it, but it doesn't mean you got to like involve yourself in somebody else's life.
Because
what are you doing?
If that was the case, then you would kind of stray away from it. Like, oh, I don't like my kid going to that, so just don't let your kid go to something like that.
Right.
Is that the same kind of sense in like schools and stuff too? You know how they're like, oh, well, my kindergarten teacher is very, LGBT positive, and now my kid's learning all this stuff at a young age where I wouldn't want them to learn it. Well, then take your kid out of there or do something else. But then you have the whole thing where they're like, oh, I work a 9-to-5 job, like I never expected, Yeah.
Well, also this is the other thing. Like instead of going like, well, how do we address this, right? Like if you saw something with your teacher specifically, right, or something that the school is doing, and then you want to have that addressed, right? So you go and then you go to the school, you have that addressed.
Talked about it, yeah.
But instead what's happening is people say this narrative of they're trying to turn the kids gay, right? This is like just the thing that they'll say, right?
Yeah.
And they'll say that because there's like a pride flag around, right? So they're misunderstanding the point of the pride flag, right? Or whatever. Like, or they're trying to say like, you know, they're trying to like make the kids think a certain way or whatever. And, you know, I'm not in those classrooms. I can't, you know, say for sure, but I don't feel like, I mean, like a lot of teachers, there's a teacher who has that joke, like, I can't get them to like solve an equation or I can't get them to like read this thing or whatever. And they'll go like, you think I'm going to like teach them how to, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, and you know, I have my joke about that. And like that whole, the idea that kids are going to listen to their teachers is like hilarious. Like,
yeah.
Like, no, they're not. Like, but I mean, like, but also like if we're talking about it like in a serious way, these are all things that can be addressed in rational ways. And it's not like like your school that your kid goes to is some monolith that's like, you know, like they're all sitting around like, how do we turn the kids gay today? Mm-hmm. If you have some kind of issue with it, you know, it's a thing you can address with teachers and with school boards and with like, you know, I mean, these are things that are there's like rational ways to deal with it, but people get so worked up that they immediately go to the irrational answer.
Yeah,
right?
Well, we got to protest or we got to get angry or.
Yeah, and you know, there is like a kind of a push to feel a certain way about something, think about it, and then react to, or not think about it, and then just react to it based on how you feel instead of like trying to gather information or whatever, because outrage is more popular than, you know, thoughtfulness.
Understanding. Yeah.
So like, and also like not taking into account that like other people are just people. So like, what are the odds that the people who have like taken this job that doesn't pay them that well to educate children, what are the odds that like they're doing all that just so they can like push the gay agenda, as if there's meetings for that? Well, I mean, the gay agenda is literally just like, hey, please let us be. You know what I mean? Like this idea that like that people want to like make other people gay or something. It's you don't know enough gay people if you think that's the case.
Yeah.
You're like, if you meet a gay person, no one, you know, and then, you know, somebody might be like, oh, some gay dude tried to fuck me. It's like, okay, well, that's somebody trying to fuck. That's not the same.
That's not the whole community.
Yeah. Oh, a guy trying to get laid. Oh, what a shocking concept. Yeah, right. You know, like, but yeah, it's easier to look at people in these groups and then say these things about them instead of like being rational and like trying to like think this through of like, well, what does this mean? You know, like people don't do that because there's also this weird thing of like the adrenaline rush of like rage and anger, you know? And I have it the other way where like my immediate thing when I see like a headline, that's where the headline thing comes in, right? When I see like a headline about some like ignorant thing or some like, you know, like some, you know, like hateful thing, and immediately I get like, I'm like mad. I'm like ready to fight somebody.
What is this? What is this?
Yeah, I'm like, what do you know? And then you see it, and then you're like, oh wait, maybe I'm not getting all the information. I just read a headline, and then you gotta like pull yourself back from it. But that adrenaline rush of like rage and anger, like that can be like addicting, or it can be like,
yeah, that's very true.
Or it gets like your that adrenaline is like a drug, you know?
Yeah, like a hit of drugs. You're just like, yeah.
Fuck. And it's the same with scrolling, right? Like when you get an adrenaline hit from just like even like positive things.
Yeah.
Like laughing. So
that's so funny that you say that, because there's some times where like I'm doing that same thing where I'm scrolling over and over again, and then I end up finding like these philosophy pages and stuff, and the first thing it says, like, if you're angry about all this, stop scrolling. Yeah. And once I see that one, I'm just like, fuck, they got me. They knew exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's been the beauty of like listening and like trying to take in more philosophy is because like it's what we all think. Like, how are we thinking? Why are we thinking this way? And is it really bad in a sense where you're getting upset by it, but someone else isn't, or vice versa? You don't get upset by it and other people do. Like, you have to take into account the thought of everyone thinking of the same thing. Like, obviously people are going to get offended. People aren't going to get offended. People aren't going to care. Mm-hmm. And that's all something you have to take into when you're doing this doom scrolling.
And most people who are offended, especially online in this case, most people who are offended are actually just bored.
Yeah.
They're trolling, they're doing whatever. Like, the fact that anybody even responds to troll comments in a sincere way anymore is like laughable. It's like, yeah, if you're sitting around on the internet like saying mean stuff to people, like, you're sad. And you're like, you don't have an outlet. So you're using you feel like the only power you have, or the only voice you have,
is a comment that somebody might read.
Right. And
somebody.
Yeah, and the truth of that is, like, I mean, there's exceptions to it, to where, like, sometimes somebody puts something out that is going to upset people, or like have some outrage, and like people just aren't intelligent enough to realize that, like,
they're trolling.
Yeah, or they're like someone comments on your thing, and they're like, they don't know that you're like people will comment on like some video or a post about some political thing that you might disagree with, right? Like something you and I might be like, hey, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that by commenting how outraged you are by it, that you're boosting that in the algorithm now, right? So your participation is now making that voice louder.
And I've always loved that, because like I get that sometimes with my guitar music. Like, I'll get positive feedback, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, guys, like, this guy sucks, and I'm just like, okay, but the fact that you took the time to say that is going to make other people see it, and maybe they agree with you, maybe not, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, because the algorithm doesn't know what that is. Yeah. It just knows someone commented. And when you interact with it, now that's boosted you again.
Yeah.
So, like, that's not it's not a healthy way to run a society, for sure. But it is a thing of like the kind of person that would go out of their way to be shitty to someone online.
And I've always been that person where it's just like, I appreciate your feedback, thank you. Like, it's not I'm not going to engage in an argument with you about like, oh, my skills, or like, oh, the things I do. It's just like, thank you for your feedback, I appreciate it. And that in itself kind of makes either the topic drop, because they're like, well, I didn't anger this guy, so obviously it's not going to be any worse, or it's just like, what do you mean? Like, you know, you're just helping me out more while you're just constantly getting in an angry phase, and you're just, again, the algorithm is like, it doesn't know the difference between a good or bad comment. It just knows something got posted. Yeah. We should put it up higher because people are talking about it.
Yeah, if you really hate the thing, don't engage with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you really, really hate it, you could report it or something, but like, you know. But I don't. Most stuff I see, I don't even care about it that much.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'm just like, whatever.
What am I gonna say?
Yeah, like, that's not gonna stop anybody. You know, what are they gonna do? Put it back up later, different or whatever.
Right, yeah.
So like, but yeah, like the trolling thing. It's funny because like, I feel like for the most part, I feel like people know that that's where trolling comes from, because it's like no one cares enough about most things to really participate in a conversation about it.
Yeah.
So if someone says some fuck shit, it's like, you know, it's funny that they don't know, you know, and you're like, hey man, you should get help. Like,
and you can kind of tell the difference. Like, I mean, you see all these positive comments, and then one person comes in negative. You're just like, well, you know, whatever. You have your own problems. Yeah. So let's go ahead and see.
Well, like the
riffraff, deal with that.
Like the riffraff, you know, we'll post a clip out of context with none of the build up. It'll just be they read the paper and then somebody gets punched in the crotch. You know what I mean? Like, and of course, anytime there's a woman, the trolls come out. Yeah. Especially on YouTube. That's like kind of just the MO, right? I mean, it's on every platform, but I'd say YouTube is probably the worst for that. But you know, you'll have a dude get dick punched, and the comments will be like, what the fuck? And then you'll have a woman get box punched, is what we refer to it as, you know? And then, you know, you'll have all these dudes come in and go, oh, I guess this is women in comedy. Oh, man. And then they comment all this stuff, and you're like, dude, you watched the same thing happen twice, you know? And this was your reaction to this because, like, you know, or, you know, one of them was, this is so lame, and I was like, so lame, it's at the Comedy Store every third Wednesday. And then somebody else chimed in and said some negative thing, and I went, oh look, and I tagged the other guy, and I said, oh look, you got a buddy, you guys can ride together to the Comedy Store every third Wednesday. And they never said anything back, but yeah, it's so laughable.
But that's the power of you, where you're just like, hey, it doesn't offend me.
Yeah,
come support it anyways, and that's what they're like. Son of a bitch! Like I didn't win that match or whatever.
Yeah, I know they're not gonna. They probably don't even live in LA or whatever. I mean, but that's the thing is like the people that are doing that, it's so apparent now that we're like, I feel like a lot of us are kind of evolving out of this like more baseline thought process, and it's just so apparent that like hurt people. So if you're out there just like saying mean stuff on the internet to people, like it's because you're dealing with something.
Yeah.
Or you're not dealing with it actually
the right way. Yeah,
you're going through something,
and
you're taking it out on other people, and I guess you can keep doing that, but like, there's a better way to live. You
could figure it out if you really tried.
You could be not a negative force in the world. You don't have to be a positive one. You can be you can be what's the right word for it? Man, I'm having brain farts today.
Let's talk about something else. How do you feel about the no more self checkouts at the grocery stores here in New Mexico? They're actually taking those out because of so much of like people complaining about theft, and people complaining that the lines are too long and there's not even any help. And then so recently at the Walmart here, they took it out, and now people are complaining that it's a human doing it again.
Yeah, there's no winning. I guess.
I love that shit.
The biggest thing would be like the overhead, right? So like Target does the thing where they have the person who works there helping people, right? So like anytime somebody has like a thing, I would say probably the smartest thing to do with that would be like if you have over a certain amount, like maybe over 20 items, you got to go to regular line, But if you're a business and you've determined that you definitely are losing more than what you're comfortable with. Yeah, because I forget what the loss leader is, what they call that, right?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it is kind of, it's like, or give them a discount.
Yeah,
you go through here, you get a discount.
I'm pretty happy about it now because like I don't have somebody checking my receipt.
Yeah,
like that was always the worst part. Like I would just buy a few things, and every time I would go out, some guy would have to check my receipt to see if everything matches.
Yeah,
but now there's no self-checkout, so everything's getting rung up. Everything goes the way it should. There's nobody checking my receipt. So I'm just like, this is actually a lot more smoother of a streamline. Like, I don't give a shit if I have to stand in line for an extra 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's easier for me. So
I don't think people really hate it as much as they say they did. I think it's like remember when everybody was like, oh, who puts pineapple on pizza? No one complained about that before it was a meme. Yeah. Like, people did, but, like, singularly. There'd be, like, a guy at a party who'd be like, oh, gross. And everybody be like, shut up.
Yeah, like I don't like it, but I'm not offended by it. Yeah, I'm not like, you're ruining pizza. Like, fuck you guys. Yeah. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah, nobody cared about that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe some New Yorkers who are like, this is how you make a fucking pizza. You know? Like, there's it wasn't, like, a big thing. But then somebody made a meme about it. So then, like, it's like the raisins in the potato salad thing.
Yeah, that's such a...
Like, white people put... Dude, I've never had it.
Yeah,
I'm from the South.
I've never seen that either.
I'm from the South. I've only had Southern-style potato salad.
And if they do, who cares? They like raisins in their potato salad.
Yeah, I mean, it's gross and wrong, but yeah. I flip it.
There you go. I'm just like, I'm angry about this now.
No, but like, yeah, I think it's the same thing with that, where like people kind of pretend to be mad about self-checkout.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the thing would be you if you're gonna have that, you need a better balance of, because sometimes they'll do that and there'll be nobody else, and so of course that's going to be infuriating to like older people who like, they don't buttons and screens. It's a problem. You know what I mean? So I think as long as they have some cashiers and like some, give people options.
I like that incentive where like if you want to go through the self checkout, go for it.
Give them a you bagged your own groceries discount.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I think that's fun.
And then have one person there to make sure people aren't. That Target does it, and seems like everybody's fine with that. But I think it's like it really is like it's like a meme thing to be like, I mean, I basically work here.
Yeah.
You're like, come on, man, you don't really feel like.
Yeah, you're not out there pushing carts. Come on, calm down, dude.
Yeah, and also like you scanned the products instead of them and then put it in the bag. But like it really isn't, unless you got a lot of stuff. If you got a lot of stuff, yeah, there should be a process that makes it faster. But that's the other thing, efficiency for them. How many more people can you get checked out if there's somebody who's like moving along the people with more stuff?
Yeah.
So I'd say like probably like a 20 item minimum on the self-checkout.
Because I always thought it was funny too. Nobody really understood how the self-checkout works, so they would scan something, but they would never put it on the scale.
Like, oh, that's the other thing. If you're gonna keep it, get rid of the whole put it in the bagging area. Like that's not. I think it's supposed to be a deterrent from like theft.
Yeah, because
like,
it's a scale. So
we know.
Like
yeah.
Everything's weighed out, and like this is why you put it in the bag on that section.
But if somebody's gonna steal something, they're not gonna scan it. So it defeats the whole purpose. Yeah. They're like, if you scan it and they're like, put it in the bagging area, we're waiting, and you're like, so now this person who might not get it, if someone's stealing something, they're going behind the back or whatever,
exactly.
They're not, or leaving it on the cart. And nobody's like scanning and going, I'm getting away with it. You didn't pay for it.
Like I have a TV in here. I didn't scan that though, but I scanned the Dr. Peppers, so everyone knows that that's okay. Okay, how about, are you a big media guy? Do you like, so one of the biggest things that people have been talking about is how woke Hollywood has gotten. Do you think that's a thing? You think that's happening? One term that I have that is a big thing is like the MCU, also now known as the MCU. The way that like, our favorite superheroes now have to be accompanied by a female, and it's not as our first saga of the MCU was a bunch of dudes, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and all these men, and then now it's like we got She-Hulk and we got Echo and we have Hawkeye, who's a girl now, and like
well, to have that opinion, you would have to not be a comic book fan, which is most people.
Yeah,
these are not new. These have been around. It's been a thing for a very long time.
Yeah.
So the idea that like they're like, there's these women now. They were always there. Yeah. These characters all existed. They didn't come up with them to put them in a movie. They're all from the comic books.
Well, with cash grabs and stuff going on now, like you've heard the controversy with Madam Web, like that.
So there's stuff that's apparent, and it's not. This is the problem, man. It's back to that. What can people sell? It's not that woke is taking over. It's that there's people whose job it is to sell a product
to everybody, and
they see that younger people tend to be more progressive, so they go, well, what can we do to cater to that? Which artistically, I would say there is a limit to what, if you're doing that in a way that is not representative of the source material, then that's a problem. Yeah. And I would say maybe the way they executed Madam Web and the casting might have been the issue there, right?
Yeah.
But women isn't the problem. It's the execution of these things, because all of those characters come out of the MCU, and these are all things that already existed, right?
Yeah.
So like the cash grab part of it would be the problem. It's not woke. Which I hate the term so much. It's woke, so dumb.
Woke.
It's such a dumb term. Like white people stole it from black people. Woke literally was like the phrasing meant like stay woke to white people's bullshit. That's where woke comes from.
I always thought it was a sleeping problem. Like I'm just woke all the time.
Well, it was like don't sleep on them because they're sneaky.
Yeah.
And they were right. We were, we did some stuff for a while. But yeah, the term woke like is so silly. Like it's just it's progressiveness. Yeah. You don't like progressiveness. Now where the problem that I see is the way in which people are co-opting it, right? So like it's companies co-opting it. There's nothing wrong with being progressive, as long as it's done in a genuine way. And even when it's disingenuous, I'd rather have somebody fake being on the right side of something, because the worst thing they're doing is trying to make some money off of something they don't believe.
Okay.
Right? Versus like people who are actually doing things that are harmful to groups of people, I would say.
See, that's what's weird though, is like that's what I don't understand, is because like there was this one clip, where Jon Stewart was interviewing like an executive producer or director of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And one of the main things that she said is like, I love that my movies make men uncomfortable. Like, that's what I strive for in my movies.
Yeah.
Does that kind of put a sense of like, well, why are you this kind of person that wants to do that to people, instead of it being like, being the progressive, I'm making it so it's more acceptable to everybody.
Well, that's so I would say the problem with the way that she presented what she was trying to get across was an issue there, which is another thing that people on what I would say, in my opinion, are on the correct side of issues. Sometimes feeling like you're right about something can make you be an asshole.
Oh, okay.
Like, just because you're correct about the vibe of something, or like the way you're trying to convey, just because you're correct about the thing doesn't mean you're doing it the right way, which is why we have so much pushback right now. Like Akash Singh has that joke about where he's like the
Apu one?
No, he's got that joke where he's like white guys feel like they can't say anything anymore, so then the only time they feel like they can actually espouse their views is when they go into the voting booth, and that's how you wind up with Trump, right?
Oh, okay.
So like, it is kind of a good point where, like, if you don't take, see, this is where we have to hold each other accountable with people we agree with, right? If you don't espouse that view in the correct way, you're not going to get people on your side who disagree with you by being like mean to them.
Yeah,
right?
You're like doubling down.
Yeah, nobody's ever changed their mind because somebody was mean. Like, nobody's ever been like, you know what, they were really mean.
Yeah, that
Good
makes
point.
sense.
I feel differently now.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how shit works, right?
Yeah.
So the sentiment that she's trying to get across there is that not every man, right? But the issues with men in culture today, a lot of men have an issue with something that is based in like a societal norm, right? So, for instance, like seeing, what was the movie? Captain Marvel, right?
The Marvels.
So remember Captain Marvel? When Captain Marvel came out, all these dudes were like mad that there was this movie that's like empowering towards women, right? But it wasn't demeaning to men. It was just empowering women. There's no part in Captain Marvel where somebody's like,
yeah, she didn't like punch somebody in the dick or something.
Yeah,
like,
and then go, you're less than me.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But there, for some reason, to see a woman in like a powerful role of a fictional character who has the powers of Superman,
which is
as if superpowers have a gender, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, they would go, she's got boobs, it doesn't work in this body, and then, like, you know what I mean? Like it's, number one, it's fictional. Number two, like, they're superpowers. They're genderless. Superpowers are whoever has the power, right?
Yeah.
Like, nobody ever said that about Storm. Nobody's ever like, why does she get to move the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just the zeitgeist of the time, right? The thing going on right now is anything that looks like it's even kind of progressive, people look at it and go like, that's a problem, right? They're trying to like push these ideas or whatever. Instead of like looking at it in a more, objective viewpoint, which is like they have this nice message in there that, like, you know, that these, like, being a girl doesn't limit you in terms of like who you are as a person and what you can do. Obviously, and no one would disagree with this, obviously there's physical limitations to, like, you know, a 6'5" man who's a bodybuilder and a 6'5" woman who's a bodybuilder. Yeah. Nobody is this whole thing, like this made up argument about, like, people saying that, like, no, women can do it. Like, that's not real. Nobody's arguing that. Everybody can see physical differences
to a sense, but
the thing is that, like, what you don't want to do is make a woman feel like she couldn't also just lift weights. She's not, like, you know what I mean? Like she can lift weights and get to the highest class of whatever she's doing too. She can feel good about herself, and if she wants to get ripped, she can get ripped like the dude's doing. You know what I mean? Like, if he can bench 350 and she can only bench 250, who cares? Like, whatever. Like, this idea that there's like this zeitgeist of, or there's like groups of people out there trying to go like, no, women can bench 350 too, and it's like, sure, some of them maybe, but like nobody. It's not a real argument. It's a made up thing. It's made up. There's no, like, think about when you're like out with people. Does anybody actually have that conversation with you, or is this an online internet thing? Has anybody in your real life ever come up to you and been like, women can bench press the same amount as men? That's not a thing. Right?
That's true.
like these are things that people rile each other up about because people aren't smart enough to realize that like these
They're
are
clickbaiting you.
Right.
They're just getting your attention.
Right. And so the same thing with Captain Marvel, where like people saw like this movie and just got upset about it. I forget the original question, to be honest with you. We've kind of gone off this like,
well, the MCU and like the decline and like how people think it's like a woke thing because there's more females in there than there was men back in the day. Like,
yeah, I would say there's an obvious cash grab towards using progressive ideology to get people to buy tickets to stuff.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's like, it's dumb, and we would rather that happens sometimes, and we would rather you guys just make a good movie that happens to have that. But it also doesn't mean that you push back so far the other way that you call anything that's remotely progressive a problem. Yeah. It's like, call the companies out on being cash-grabbing, scummy, like, producers.
Yeah, getting the clicks for what they need.
There's nothing wrong with... Also, Marvel is like the leader in the X-Men is about the civil rights era.
Yeah.
Like,
coming out. I love how you said that what it was originally about, and now it's changed to like it's more of the trans activist rights. They say that more now.
Well, but this is the thing: it's
all about human rights. That's what the whole thing is.
Exactly. It's all about human rights.
Yeah.
So, like, the idea that these ideas are bad. Because you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Me Too thing. When the Me Too thing happened, and basically every woman that is on the planet, like most women were like, hey, this bad thing happened to me once, and they talked about it. Because so many people did it that so many people felt like they could finally kind of
release it.
Yeah, and like tell these stories, right? And what happened was there was a sort of pushback to that because, you know, some of that stuff... you know, they were like, oh, well, so-and-so lied, and like, or like this thing with Aziz Ansari, like, oh, he did this thing, and they're like trying to make it sound like he did this, like he raped somebody or whatever. Like, they're trying to like push, so they all went, oh, this Me Too thing's gone too far. But it's not like, it can be, these things can exist at the same time. You can have people that should be held accountable for like, you know, like lying or trying to like manipulate things a certain way. But it doesn't negate the fact that like the whole world was kind of like, hey, we've all been, and if men were honest, there'd be more of them talking about it too.
Yeah.
Like, or not honest, but felt safe enough to be able to come out with that. But it feels like it's like we're not allowed, right? It feels like it's unmanly to be like, hey, someone abused me, right? So like you have a large chunk of the male population that never even address that, and then some of them did, you know, and then a lot of them got ridiculed for it. You know what I mean? Like people made fun of them.
Yeah, you pussy, and shit like that.
Yeah, and it's like for what? Like, you know, and they're like, oh, some people are just doing it for attention. They're doing it for this, or they're doing it for that. But like, at the end of the day, like, well, did it happen to him or not?
Because I like this.
Because if it happened to him,
it shouldn't have been done.
Right. Like, just because it makes you feel uncomfortable to talk about, right? As it should. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But like, this is a societal reckoning of it's. I like the thing that Bo Burnham said about it. He's like, the growing pains of a society doesn't mean you stop growing. Like, these things happen because like that's where we're at right now, and you kind of figure it out as you go. And it's unfortunate that like, you know, sometimes it gets messy.
Hand, yeah.
But like the idea that like we shouldn't hold people accountable who did something wrong versus like we should just throw it all out the window because this other stuff happened, right? Like, why throw it all out the window? Deal with that stuff as it comes and deal with this. Like, you can do all of it.
There's a like an equal playing field or like a level ground somewhere in it. That's the same thing with politics, right? Like back in the day, politics were the type of like, hey, a liberal can talk to a conservative and still come with a mutual agreement to what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Compared to now, where it's just like, I won't even listen to you because you're from this political side, and same vice versa. Like I find that kind of like disheartening because I'm just like like that's how I thought that's how we grew as people, is if we like talked about the problems that we've had or the problems that are occurring, then we come up with a more level set, like this is why we should be doing it this way, not great, it's so extreme on this side that I never could talk to anybody on this side, so let's just divide ourselves even more.
And being from the South especially, and like having people I care about be on the other side of some of these issues, you know, it does spark these conversations, and people I care about that I still want to have in my life who, you know, if it's someone I don't know and they're saying some shit that I think is like wrong, I can just go like, all right, man, I'm done with that person. Like, whatever, you know, like it's not,
you deal with you.
It's too much. I'm not dealing with it.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody I'm close to, you know, and there's been people I've talked to that more logical side of like looking at things objectively instead of like how it makes you feel, you know, like that's the irony of like the facts don't care about your feelings crowd. It's like, bro, you're driven by feelings. Like there's a lot of emotion going on in your facts don't care about your feelings. Like that's a feeling, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
you're getting upset because of that.
Yeah. The sentiment of what you're trying to say is its own thing, but you're operating from a place of emotion right now. You're pretty worked up, dude.
Interesting. That's so funny.
But yeah, there's just like a there's people in my life that I know that I can't let them just say these things and just let it go. Like that I care about them, and I don't want them to be part of the group of people that are
that aren't thinking about it.
Well, I don't want them to be people that I can't keep talking to someone who I know is actively participating in like ruining society or making it worse. And the irony of that, of course, is that that's how they feel about the thing they're talking about, right? But like there's stuff that's tough, man. There's stuff like there's a buddy of mine that we're still friends, and it's difficult, man. He grew up, he had a rough childhood, rough family. I'm basically like lived at my house a lot of the time when we were kids, and my mom's like raised him, you know, and to see some of the stuff that he has a reaction to about gay people or whatever, because to him he's like, well, it's the cultural thing of this, not your mom's. They're cool, because he's not thinking about the fact that like when people view gay people as a monolith, as this one big thing, people will mistreat my mom's. So because you're all about this, instead of looking at it in a nuanced way, now they're looking at it as gay people are this, so they're going to treat my mom's bad.
Yeah.
And you're not going to put that together unless I like actively
educate them.
And this is the other part about being like, you know, being a straight white dude. Talk to other straight white dudes about it then, you know? Try to bridge that gap, because like who else is going to do it? Like if you got a racist friend or family member or somebody that you know that like you feel like you could have a conversation with them that might open their mind or something. If you know there's no way, you know, you don't have to participate. But like, you know, like if somebody is on the wrong side of some shit, take time, try to do it. Cause I don't think it's like if somebody doesn't like Mexicans, it ain't a Mexican person's job to be like, no, we're people.
You don't get it, eh?
Yeah. Like it's, you know, great if somebody can, but like that's a lot of stress and a lot of unnecessary shit, you know, like it's like, hey man, like maybe someone that they thought would agree with them that comes to them and goes, no man, you're wrong about this. And like, you know, it's the only way we fix stuff. So
that's the shit. I have a bunch of weird topics on here. Like I really like the show Young Sheldon. I don't know why that's on here.
I don't. That sounds awful.
What? Oh my god! I fucking. You know? Have you ever heard of the term mug shorty?
Mug shorty?
Yeah.
No.
So there's an Instagram page, and it's a.
Oh, is it mugshots? Hot girl mugshots?
Yeah. I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah, we got that stuff in Florida big time.
Yeah.
They still have like printed newspapers that they leave on counters in gas stations.
Yeah, of like that.
Yeah.
That's funny that it's even printed on paper. Like you would think it's like an internet thing, but no, we've done it for a long time. We've been doing it for quite a while. Oh man.
What else you got?
Another cool topic is Cheech and Chong.
Love them.
They
life changing.
They came out with a vodka, A new vodka. It's pretty expensive, but the vodka, once you're finished with it, turns the vodka bottle into a bong. I was like, that is pretty cool.
You know, and that's thematic for them. You know, their old comedy albums, you used to be able to take the insert out and it was rolling paper.
Oh, see, that's sick. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I remember some of the like albums where they're always talking about weed or something, but that's cool that they can do that.
Yeah, not a lot of people have them anymore, so they're actually like worth money because everybody smoked it.
If they're pretty rare, right? That's sick. That's why I think this is going to be after a while. It's going to be pretty rare when it's just like, because I think they're only doing a limited edition.
Yeah,
but that's the cool thing to do now. It's like, I got limited editions.
Get your money, boys.
And Cheech and Chong has always been great too. I fucking love those guys. I've watched them as a kid too. They pushed
the envelope. They used to get in trouble all the time.
Really?
Yeah, they got kicked off stages and cops called on them, and like they're like subversive back in the day, man. Because you know we're living in like kind of the heyday in a lot of places for weed. You know, where you really everything's fine.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of places,
and now it's just like,
I mean, it was a federal crime back then.
Yeah.
When they were, you know.
Dude, I remember as a kid just like trying to hide it from my parents and stuff, and now my mom's just like smoking joints, and it's just like it's a cool thing now. Just like I hate everything. I struggled my whole life for this. Oh man. How do you feel about the term desensitization? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? You think that
desensitization?
Yeah, you think people are kind of like portraying stuff in media and like news and stuff, so that when it does happen, it's not as shocking. Like, let's take an example.
I don't think it's done on purpose.
Like aliens, let's take that for an example.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, hey, we saw aliens out there. Or, hey, the government's finally coming out with aliens, so that when aliens do, if they ever
Project Blue Book, all that kind of stuff.
They ever do show themselves, you're just going to be like, oh, well,
Yeah, I don't think that's not being done. I think whatever it is that's going to make money is what they're going to do.
Oh, really now?
Yeah. I think conspiracy stuff tends to get overblown. I think there are very real conspiracies, but they usually revolve around money.
Okay.
Or something that's going to help make money. If there wasn't documents to prove this, it would be a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
So the CIA helped overthrow like half of South America.
Yeah, a bunch of governments, yeah.
And why'd they do that? For political foothold, but also so the Dole Fruit Company could, operate and
make some money. Yeah.
And they did that for corporate greed. So like those files weren't released for a really long time. And I think that a lot of this stuff revolves around anything that disrupts the power structure is what will ultimately have some kind of conspiracy theory, right? But the power structure operates. There's a couple of people I think that are truly like power hungry for the sake of power, but the majority of it revolves around money and like the idea that there's like satanic baby eating, pedophile cults and all this stuff. It's like, it's money.
Yeah, like even Epstein, right? That was all money based.
It was all money. Yeah,
money.
That's something that where like that gets misconstrued and people don't fully understand the scope and scale of like he was like working with intelligence agencies and like the way he was able to keep operating everything was doing those honeypot things. Like he had people in his pocket because he caught them doing a thing. Well, entrapped them doing a thing, right? But the sick part is that once they're already caught, they're like, well, it's too late now. I guess I'll keep doing it.
Just going with the whole.
But they kept doing all the bad shit, right? So, but Les Wexner, the guy that owned Victoria's Secret, that dude, you can only imagine what he must have had on him. He signed over. He made Epstein his power of attorney. He controlled his finances.
Oh wow!
Like if he wanted to gift himself some money, he could do it. So like the majority of his connections and everything was like people he blackmailed. It's all money based. He was still sick and did horrific things, but the driving force behind that was greed and power. It wasn't because the devil. Like,
do you think that plays on a political like world power kind of scale?
100%.
Like now you see the whole China thing, like they're doing whatever they can to try to make the West not as good as everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, they're doing it right now. This whole thing we were talking about with social media. Everybody fights online, and it's crazy because they've shown that the Russians and the Chinese have
the troll farms,
dedicated units of troll farms, and their whole job is to make people fight with each other.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and they're like shutting down TikTok. It's like, hey, shut it all down then.
Yeah,
it's all
bad. Yeah,
you think they're not fighting? Facebook is
very notorious for that.
Yeah,
very.
And also, it's where all the boomers are who have no media literacy, so they read a headline and they think that's news.
Yeah.
And then also they're just getting hacked every 5 seconds because they don't know to not click a link.
I know that there's a funny jokes there that I've heard before.
Yeah, like it's not like, wait, a joke?
Yeah, there's a bunch of jokes that I've heard where like boomers don't understand clickbaiting, so they click on anything, and then all of a sudden their finances are totally wiped out because they just like, oh yeah, hey, is this me on a picture? And then it's just a link to like a fucking thing,
and they'll just click it. It's crazy. So like that kind of thing it's crazy that like it's been shown that all of this stuff is incredibly unhealthy for us mentally, but it's also like engineered in a way that like it's destroying the fabric of like the way that we are with each other, and especially like the way that foreign operators are during election season.
Yeah,
and it's like, hey guys, like if TikTok with by the way no evidence that they've presented to this beyond these hearings, right? There's no like, here's the algorithm that proves that like they're doing this, right?
Would you be able to prove though? Like you're not in control of the algorithm. So right. And what would China release saying that it is or isn't?
Right. So that's what I mean by like, if you're gonna do this thing where you're forcing a sale of a company because of concerns, it's like, hey man, like that's not evidence. Like if that wouldn't hold up in a court of law, if you took that into a court of law, a judge would be like, he'd throw it out. He'd be like, what evidence do you have? They'd be like, it's all conjecture. They'd be like, well, get rid of it.
What was it? They're mad about TikTok because it's posting a lot of Israel and Palestine stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That it's promoting a lot of that.
Yeah, don't say that. I won't bury this. I'm just kidding.
I'm pretty sure my viewership is not good enough to be canceled yet. So, yeah, but I get what you're saying though. Is that like, and I love what you just said too, where you're just like, get rid of all of it then. If you're just going to get mad about one social media site that's doing something, they all do it. They all have been doing it for a very long time.
Or put safeguards in or do something about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do something. But you're just like, we're going to get rid of this thing. And it's like, okay, what'd you do about Facebook? All they did was they've tried to do a little better with like the CP stuff, that kind of thing. Like, They've had a push for that. They've had a push for, for like to try and get people to not do wild stuff on lives, like that kind of thing. But I mean, they really haven't done much. And so like, and going back to the thing about TikTok, like there's no tangible evidence that they can provide other than the fact that that they're saying it's owned by a foreign power, even though it's a company, and it's like, and it might even be true, but like. It's crazy to think that they had a unanimous vote unless there's something they're not telling us, and in which case, hey, okay, if it's the right thing for the country, but we should probably know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be
because I'm pretty sure
secret.
Yeah, if people knew the truth of why they're doing it, then it wouldn't be as extreme. They wouldn't be like, oh, this is horrible. That's why I shouldn't be using TikTok. But it's more of like we're telling you not to use TikToks. Trust us.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we've never trusted you for anything. Like, it was the alien thing all over again.
Yeah. So the idea that like that they're doing it on purpose to get us to desensitize. I think the way that the human mind works, like they're all just trying to make a bunch of money, and then we're living in the results.
Okay. And
when you put profit before everything else,
do we think would something really happen though if you see like, okay, like Mark Zuckerberg just got like told that like, hey, look at, he's building this $50 million bunker or whatever for what? Or the whole Denver International Airport or Cheyenne Mountain and stuff like that. Like, are those things that we should concern ourselves because they're real? Or is it just like some dude with a lot of money just fucking playing around being like, I want to make a clubhouse?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just in cases, obviously.
But like that sucks for me and you because we would never be able to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's also this reaction that people have to it is the reaction of the helpless, right?
Yeah.
Because the truth is, what it is, we're having to grapple with our own mortality. Right?
Okay.
So we're having to go like, well, look at him doing that. What does that mean?
Yeah. What is that? But that's like the neighbor, right?
Yeah.
The neighbor who has a high fence, and you're just like, I wonder what he's doing back there.
Yeah, probably something bad.
Yeah. Exactly.
and maybe, but the thing is that that when it comes to this whole like the doomsday prepper thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, if you got the time and money, you can prep for something, but the average person, you don't got the time to you don't have the time to read about the thing that you're afraid of. You saw an article title.
Yeah.
You might have read a little bit of the Instagram caption.
But that was it.
Yeah. You don't even have the time to go down the rabbit hole of the thing you're concerned about. You think you're gonna outrun the apocalypse?
That's what's crazy too, and that's what's funny too is like people turn it into a more of like, oh, the world leaders and stuff are against us, but then have you ever really considered space and stuff? Like maybe they're just scared of a fucking asteroid. Like that can happen too. Very, very, it's possible.
Yeah, the idea that they're against us is kind of silly. It's like they're not. I mean, they're against us in terms of having a happy life. But it's not to keep you unhappy. Yeah. It's whatever. Again, it's whatever makes money, whatever drives a profit. Monsanto, in any justice or in any world that is just, Monsanto would be shut down and the people who created it would be executed.
Okay.
They have done horrific things. I mean, the stuff, the cancer they've caused, the stuff they did, the bribes they paid off FDA people with. I mean, it's a company that has done crimes against humanity, frankly. Halliburton, there's Dick Cheney was vice president who had to sell off his shares to his buddies of his Halliburton stock, which was a private military contractor. And then, right after they get into office, 9/11 happens a year later, and then Halliburton gets the no-bid contract to, support the troops.
Yeah.
And the government pays them billions of dollars, and this is the kind of stuff. This is what the truth about it all is. They're just a bunch of sociopaths trying to make as much money as possible because it's the only thing that matters to them because they have no empathy, and humans mean nothing to them other than a way to make a profit.
But that's what's kind of weird and scary too is I guess they don't see themselves as humans. Like where does that incentive come where it's just like, oh well, who gives a fuck? They're lesser than me.
I think they do see themselves as humans, but they see themselves as special
humans.
Yeah, like if you ever read about if you ever read about narcissists, like that, they say that CEOs, because not all narcissists and sociopaths are actually bad people. Some of them are functional members of society, and you would never even know that was a thing about them.
Yeah.
But they do say that that narcissists and sociopaths tend to gravitate towards jobs like politician, jobs like CEO, things where to make decisions about the masses almost involves a detached way of thinking to make those decisions, right?
Okay.
So it's a kind of like the scale, right? Like if I do this, it'll hurt a lot of people. But if I don't do this,
everybody,
it'll hurt the money, which will end up hurting more people in the long run or whatever. So, for example, no, I'm not going to mention any nation in particular, but let's just say we gave some nation, billions of dollars a year and also jets and rockets and ammunition and weapons.
I wonder who that is.
Doesn't matter. Let's just say we gave them all that, and then maybe they had a small overreaction into a situation, and then 30,000 civilians died. Let's just say that happened. In any rational world where people where justice would be served, someone would be like, hey, why is this still happening? Maybe until that works itself out, we don't keep paying these weapons manufacturers to make a shitload of money off of the death of tens of thousands at a time. But instead, they go, you guys are all doing it wrong. Bad. Boo. That's it? That's what you do? No. You know what I mean? So, yeah, when it comes down to it, whatever's going to make money is what's going to keep happening.
That's a hot ticket item.
As long as we all allow it, which we will, because we're too busy trying to eat.
Yeah, live a life.
Pay rent.
Yeah.
The average person is too busy trying to live. You can't, what are you going to... Yeah, that's the other thing. We've learned more we know more now than we've ever known, about anything. And granted, some of it's like misinformation and or misconstrued truth or whatever. But at the end of the day, the ability for a regular person to know something versus ever before. I mean, it was back in the day, it was you were royalty. The only people who could read or write were people who had money. Yeah. Because that's how you learned that. Everybody else couldn't read or write for a long time.
So they kept them still under the rug.
Yeah, and it wasn't even intentional. I don't think. I think that was just a societal norm of the time. Yeah, and that's why you had things like serfdom, and things like the class system and everything like that. And now what's happening is the growing pains of a society. Right, the class system is starting to, things are melding. So people are starting to see that a regular person has value too. Just because you don't have money doesn't mean that you're,
not important. You're not.
Yeah, it doesn't
valued.
Mean, it doesn't mean that you're expendable. And so when you start looking at things in that way, then you're like, well, why is it like that? And who's controlling that? And why do they get to have everything? Yeah. And they're like, well, some people are like, they worked really hard for it. And when you actually look into how that happened, that's not true. Yeah. Some people, for sure. But they also, they started on third base,
pretty quick. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, too. Because I feel like now it's even harder for, someone like us to, well, we're probably never going to own a home.
Yeah. And this goes back to what we're talking about. Like corporate greed, right? BlackRock do you know what BlackRock is? Yeah. Yeah. So they own... they own privately owned homes. That's insane. Why is a company buying up private properties to sell to people and then using shell corporation names to funnel the money so that it looks like there's all these small real estate companies, but they're all just BlackRock.
It's all just BlackRock.
It's dude, and then you're like, hey, can you do something about this? And they're like, no.
No, they help so much. They're so much. We get so much money from them, and they're we're helping the military complex projects and the worst.
So it's all tied in, So unfortunately, the unfortunate thing is the only way to change anything is to educate the public, and the public, for the most part, is either too busy or too stupid.
Which is hand in hand. You don't get smarter because you're always working so hard.
There's uninterested versus actually unintelligent versus brainwashed or whatever. I'm being hyperbolic. There's a myriad of reasons why people don't know this stuff, but I think the conspiracy I still believe in, and everyone should, is it's all about money, and as long as they keep us divided, everybody will keep voting one way or the other, and then fighting about it back and forth, as if BlackRock's not paying
both of them.
Yeah. As if Raytheon isn't paying both of them, so that they can keep selling missiles. It's not to say that both sides are the same. There is a different impact on people based on who you vote on in terms of the immediate issues. However, they keep people in this cycle to where they're going back and forth. And on the more like larger level, the macro level, when you look at it, they're controlling, keeping everybody focused on all that stuff, when really what we should be all doing is going like, hey, all of the stuff you're saying is nonsense. You're trying to get us to do the thing where we all fight about stuff, but you're paid by a corporation to be where you're at, essentially.
Yeah.
As a member, as a representative of us, and you're not being that. You're representing corporate interests and greed, which they've done for hundreds of years. but it's at its probably its zenith right now in terms of like how much money is being poured into that and the way in which it operates. I don't think it's ever been as large of a mechanism as it is right now.
And it's very apparent, but people can't comprehend it sometimes.
Right. And we get sucked into it with the stuff we were just talking about, right? Because at the end of the day, this stuff does affect us, right? So like I used to live, okay, so Florida is a great example, right? It's a dumb thing that is dividing people, right? These like culture war things, but people take it so serious, like, and also utilize it in a way to where it becomes real. So like, I don't think Ron DeSantis actually cares about any of the stuff that he's said. I think that he does it for political clout and votes and stuff like that. I think that if you could get elected another way without doing that, he would be very quiet about all the stuff that he pretends to care about, because he only started caring about it when he knew he could get him reelected. Because he didn't run on any of that. He didn't start with any of that. And that stuff was already going on then. He was just a regular kind of run-of-the-mill Republican back in the day.
Yeah.
So, like, when you have someone, like, doing things like, you know, that are against members of like, groups of people in that state, and he's running for office, it's hard not to be against that, right? So you got to push back because you want to protect those people. And then the people who are supportive of his ideas feel like they're protecting some traditional values or whatever it is, right? So then they do their thing, right? And they're pushing back because they feel like they got to hold their ground, and we feel like we got to, like, hold ours, right? And to some extent, you really do. Like, these little tiny things, they try to, you know, people try to talk about it like it doesn't matter. And, you know, maybe on, like, a larger scale it might not. But in people's day-to-day lives, like, if they had never passed gay marriage, you know, before gay marriage was made legal, when we were at the hospital, my stepmom would have such a hard time getting in to see my mom. Okay. And it was because of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so it does matter.
Or even like buying a house or something now.
Right. Yeah. So just because there is a culture war going on that I do think that many powerful people are happy to have going on, so we don't pay attention to them, just because that's going on doesn't mean that, like, these aren't important. Like, yes, they're doing it to keep us divided, but also, why are you so keen on being on your side of this, right? So they know we're going to be disagreeing, and we have no choice but to participate to some extent, because if everybody just stopped caring about that stuff on one side of it, the other side would win. And unfortunately, I would say that the more right-wing elements of that, they view the win as, you know, against God, or, you know, it's going to, like, be some negative impact on their family or whatever, right? They've got this idea in their head about what that means. They don't realize that those people just want to be left alone, you know. And then whatever happens, if there is something that you feel like is too far, you can address that then. It's not like the world's going to fall apart because, you know, something didn't work out politically for you.
Oh, okay.
Versus what they don't see what they're doing as something that's, they see it as like holding ground.
Yeah, like I'm holding the fort.
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that, like, they're supporting things that are actually hindering people from being prosperous, free Americans.
Yeah.
I might have got a little on a tangent there.
Yeah, that's what I like. America! I mean, that's the beauty of this country, though, is that, like, we get to actually kind of speak about this. And if you take it into an account, that's good. Yeah. If you don't, that's good, too. Like, do your part, whatever you want to do. Like,
yeah, it's that was the point. That was the point I was trying to make. It's yes, they are trying to do divide and conquer to us, but, like, to some extent, like, we have to work out those things, and God help them if we ever really do work out all these small differences between us, and everybody kind of realizes that they're all on the same page, and they realize that 1%, less than 1% of the population has all the money and makes all the choices. Because if that happens, I don't think it ever will. They're pretty good at what they do. They've been doing it a long time, like since the beginning of time.
I mean, they even like have people that go through like these psychological, like they go through like classes and stuff to learn why this is working so well, and that's why they keep establishing it. They're like, okay, well, now there's a new method of how we can do it better, and like, I mean, look at the whole thing with AI, and like, maybe AI would help us all, like, to actually find a mutual understanding ground, but it's not, because we're just like so concerned with like, oh, it's taking away on jobs, or it's not letting people be creative, or blah blah blah. Maybe if we just told the AI certain things that they're doing, it would actually be like, yeah, you guys are all fucking up, and you're letting the less than 1% take over. So that's your guys' fault. Stop trying to look for us for like creative ideas. It's ridiculous. It's so it's funny, and it's like disingenuous, and it's like, well, what is there to do? Like, just live your life. Like at this point, like you can't.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do is like, you try to do the right thing, and like, be, not be a piece of shit. Like,
that's the only reason why I like working at the old folks home, is because like I know this is their last leg of life, and I wouldn't want it to make it so I'm just like, yeah, you guys, what did you do with the red? Like I try to make it as happy and like loving and like respectable as I can, because I know that's pretty much like that's all they have, is like they have some people there have been abandoned by their families. They're just like, this is like, hey, mom, you have to go to this old folks home, and we're never going to see you, only like once a month, if that, because I've seen some people there that have never seen their family, and I've been working there for like 5 years. So that's just like, well, if I can be your family and I can make you feel like you are actually a person, I'm going to keep doing that. And I mean, I'm not banking it. I'm not like, hell yeah, this is why I'm in the retirement community, because this is where all the money is. Like, it's not. Like, it's sad to know that this is the last leg of what's going on with their lives. And someone like me, and that's the other shitty part too, is like, I feel like my name in itself, Angel, like people always tell me like, do you live up to your name? And I'm just like, oh my God, you're putting so much pressure on me. Oh my God, I have to do so much good now in the world.
It's just a bit. They don't care.
Yeah, that's so hard.
It's just a bit.
Zach, we've been here for like 3 hours.
Holy shit.
I know, right? That's the fun part. Let people know where they can find you. What are some things you have coming up? Tell us the sweet life of Zach Bennett.
I'm gonna try and get back to Albuquerque probably in I don't know. I'm gonna try and come back when it's not cold. Since I've only been here when it's cold.
And then the worst part is that it wasn't this cold like a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah, I'll probably come back next year. But if I can come back sooner, I will. I might come back in the summer, just for a quick hang or something. Okay. But yeah, besides that, I'll just I'm gonna be opening for my buddy on the road, opening for Ben Brainerd, States guy, if you know who that is on TikTok. He's
nice.
Dressed like the different states, and they argue with each other and stuff.
Okay.
Also very funny comic. I opened for him on the road, so there's a ton of dates for the entire year. So that's all on benbrainerd.com. I'm featuring for him the entire year. So any of those cities, I'll be there. And then my own stuff, I'll be back in Florida doing some dates in July. So Zach Bennett Comedy on everything, Zach Bennett Comedy. I would like to change my name because it's a little too mayonnaise sandwich for me, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I know, right? That's not bad. But that's everything, right? Zach Bennett Comedy, Instagram.
Yeah, Zach Bennett Comedy, Instagram, all that stuff.
You have your own website too?
Yeah, I got a website. I never keep up with it or put dates on it, so don't even bother looking there.
Yeah, just let's go judge him on that.
I gotta
let's
fix
put some
it.
Negative comments on there. Maybe we'll get him to do more.
Maybe.
Probably not.
I won't see it. I don't look at it. Anyway, yeah, that's it, man.
It's always a good hang. I love hanging out with you. You're a very genuine person, and like
Thanks.
I had a great connection when you came here and we first met, and I was like, this guy's cool. I like your style. I like the person you are. So
Thanks,
really
dude.
appreciate you coming and doing this as well, because like that's one thing haven't been doing a lot is been in the comedy scene, and then like knowing that you would still come hang out with me, even though I'm like, this guy's not even doing any dates. This guy, I haven't seen this guy in any shows.
Hey,
like
again,
blah blah blah.
Again, dude, micro macro, right?
Yeah.
Like once you get out of a place, none of that stuff matters.
Yeah,
Nobody cares.
that's a beautiful part.
Nobody knows who we are. Who gives a shit?
That's the fun part. But I mean, we are trying to get famous.
Yeah,
so
but you're a cool person. I fuck with cool people. That's it.
That's all you guys need to know, buddy. So yeah, you guys know the routine. Like, subscribe.
Or if you're a bad person who can get me gigs, I'll pretend to like you until I'm past you. And
he's
then I'll
willing
tell
to
you
look at
shit.
the thought of being in the Illuminati, but not really.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Thanks again, Jack. You're the shit.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Going back to nice old. Gotta go to work on Monday.
This podcast was sponsored by Death.
Zach Bennett Comedy. Everywhere Zach Bennett is, this podcast will help support. Yeah, you made it without peeing.